The water in the coffee mug had turned the color of old motor oil. At the bottom, beneath a cloudy film, lay the silver earrings my husband had given me the night before. One of the posts had split open along a seam so fine I would never have noticed it with my bare eyes. 10 hours earlier, Mason had smiled, touched my hair, and said, "Put them on. I want to see my wife wearing something beautiful again." 3 weeks before that, an old man I had helped across a busy Charlotte intersection had gripped my wrist and whispered, "When your husband gives you earrings, don't wear them. Leave them in warm water overnight." I had almost laughed. Now Mason was standing outside the bathroom door, asking whether I had slept well. And I was staring at proof that the man I had supported, defended, and loved for 8 years had handed me something designed to hurt me slowly. Then Mason knocked again and said in the softest voice I had heard from him in months, "Rachel, did you put on your present?" That was the moment my marriage ended. Not when the police came. Not when I learned about the other woman. Not when his mother looked me in the face and admitted they had already planned my future without me. My marriage ended in that bathroom with my hands gripping the sink and my husband waiting on the other side of the door to find out whether his plan had begun. But to understand why he did it, and why his entire family believed they were entitled to the life my grandmother built, you have to understand what Hawthorne Farm meant to me. You also have to understand how easy it is for a woman to disappear inside a family that keeps calling her selfish every time she tries to keep one thing for herself. My name is Rachel Bennett. At the time this happened, I was 36 years old and worked in payroll for the Charlotte-Mecklenburg School District. It was not glamorous work, but I liked it. Numbers behaved according to rules. If a teacher was missing overtime or a cafeteria worker's insurance deduction was wrong, there was a reason, and if I stayed patient long enough, I could usually find it. People were different. People could smile while they erased you. People could call you family while using your credit card. People could tell you that you mattered and then crop you out of the photograph. I earned $64,000 a year. Mason had not held a steady job in 14 months. When we met, he sold kitchen appliances at a regional home store and could make a refrigerator sound like the beginning of a better life. He was warm, funny, and attentive. He remembered how I took my coffee. He called my grandmother every Sunday, even when I forgot. He once drove 2 hours in a thunderstorm because I mentioned that the screen door at Hawthorne Farm would not close properly. That version of Mason was easy to love. The problem was that I kept loving him long after he stopped being that man. By the summer everything began, we lived in a 2-bedroom townhouse in the Madison Park neighborhood of Charlotte. The rent was $1,900 a month. Both names were on the lease, but my paycheck covered the rent, utilities, groceries, health insurance, car payment, and the minimum balance on a credit card Mason had promised to stop using. He always had a reason for not working. The appliance store had changed the culture. The warehouse position was beneath his experience. The sales job in Concord wasn't a good fit. The contractor who offered him part-time work didn't respect his ideas. Every explanation sounded almost reasonable if you heard it alone. Together they formed a life in which I left the house before 7 each morning while Mason slept and came home to find him on the couch telling me how exhausting it was to figure out his next move. His mother Denise called that a difficult season. When I struggled, she called it an attitude. Denise Reed lived 20 minutes away in Matthews and ran a small event rental business out of a storage unit with Mason's younger sister, Kelsey. They owned folding chairs, white tablecloths, plastic greenery, 2 portable arches, and enough gold candle holders to decorate every wedding in North Carolina. The business had done well for a few years. Then larger companies moved into the area. Kelsey began spending more than they earned, and Denise borrowed money against her house to keep the business alive. They never told me exactly how bad things were. They only began talking about Hawthorne Farm more often. Hawthorne Farm sat outside Hendersonville, a little under 2 hours west of Charlotte. It was not a grand estate. It was a weathered white farmhouse, a red barn, a roadside apple stand, and 7 acres of sloping land where my grandmother June had grown apples, lavender tomatoes, and whatever else she believed the soil was willing to give her. There was no marble entryway, no swimming pool, no private gate with stone pillars. The kitchen floor leaned slightly toward the back door. The upstairs bathroom pipes rattled in winter. One side of the barn roof needed replacing, and the porch steps had been repaired so many times that no two boards matched. But it was the first place in my life where I had ever felt chosen. My mother died when I was 16. My father remarried before the first anniversary of her funeral and moved to Florida with a woman who disliked heavy emotional environments. He called for a while, then he called less. By the time I graduated high school, my grandmother June was the person sitting in the front row waving both hands when my name was announced. She taught me to drive on the gravel lane behind the barn. She taught me to make biscuit dough without measuring. She taught me that being kind did not require being available for mistreatment. She also taught me that a house could remember who had cared for it. Walls know the difference between love and noise, she used to say, wiping flour from her hands. A loud family isn't always a loving one. When she died, she left Hawthorne Farm to me. There was no dramatic reading of a will, no room full of shocked relatives. June had told everyone for years what she planned to do. The farm had belonged to her parents, then to her, and she wanted it to belong to the granddaughter who had spent every summer pruning trees beside her. Mason had known that before we married. At first, he said he respected it. After June died, he began calling it our place. Then his mother started calling it the family property. Then Kelsey got engaged and referred to the barn as my wedding venue. The first time she said it, we were sitting at a barbecue restaurant for her engagement dinner. I had paid the deposit because Denise's card had been declined, and she had whispered, "Please don't embarrass Kelsey tonight." I paid quietly. 2 hours later, when the server brought out banana pudding with sparklers, Kelsey clinked her glass and announced, "I've always dreamed of a fall wedding at Hawthorne Farm." Everyone cheered. I thought she was joking. Then Denise reached across the table, squeezed my hand, and said June would love seeing the place used for real family memories. Real family. The words landed harder than I expected. I looked at Mason. He did not meet my eyes. "Kelsey," I said carefully, "the barn isn't safe for a wedding right now. The roof leaks, the wiring is old, and the septic system can't handle 100 guests." Kelsey's smile dropped. "We can fix all that," she said. "With what money?" The table went quiet. Denise withdrew her hand as though I had made a scene. Mason finally looked at me. "Rachel, we don't have to talk about money tonight. You brought up using my property." "Our property," Denise corrected. "No," I said. "Hawthorne Farm belongs to me." Kelsey laughed once, but there was no humor in it. "Wow, okay. I didn't realize we were doing yours and mine after 8 years of marriage." I wanted to remind her that I had paid for the dinner she was eating. I wanted to remind Denise that I had covered 2 payments on the storage unit when their business fell behind. I wanted Mason to say one simple sentence, "My wife is right. We should have asked." Instead, he leaned close and murmured, "Could you not make this difficult?" That was the family pattern. They made a decision. I objected. My objection became the problem. A week later, Kelsey posted photographs from the engagement dinner on social media. There were 23 pictures. I appeared in one. In that photograph, I was at the edge of the frame, turned toward the server, my face half hidden. Kayla Monroe appeared in 11. Kayla had been Kelsey's best friend since high school. She was 32, slim, polished, and always dressed as if someone might take her photograph. She worked in product testing for a company that made specialty skincare products. I had met her several times over the years, but we had never become friends. In the pictures, she sat beside Mason. In one, his hand rested on the back of her chair. The caption read, "The Reeds finally all together." I stared at that sentence for a long time. Then I closed the app. When I asked Mason why I had barely been included, he did not even look up from his phone. Kelsey posts what she likes. She called Kayla part of the Reeds. So I paid for the dinner. He sighed. There are sighs people make because they are tired, and there are sighs designed to make you feel tiring. Mason had mastered the second kind. "Rachel, not everything is an attack." That sentence became a door he closed every time I tried to enter my own marriage. Not everything is an attack. You're reading too much into it. My mom is under pressure. Kelsey is excited. Kayla is practically family. Why can't you let people be happy? By August, I had begun wondering whether I was the only person in Mason's life who did not know what was happening. He started going out 2 or 3 nights a week. Sometimes he said he was helping Kelsey with deliveries. Sometimes he said he was meeting a friend who might connect him with work. Sometimes he left without explaining anything. He began wearing cologne again. Not the cedar-scented bottle I had bought him for Christmas, which still sat nearly full on the bathroom shelf. This was sharper, more expensive, and unfamiliar. His phone was always face down. He carried it into the shower. He changed the password after using the same 4 digits for 6 years. When I asked why, he smiled and said cybersecurity. That would have been funny once. By then it sounded rehearsed. At work, my closest friend was Tasha Green, a benefits coordinator who sat across the aisle from me. Tasha was 42, divorced, raising 2 teenagers, and possessed the rare ability to ask a direct question without making you feel cornered. One Tuesday afternoon, she rolled her chair toward my desk and set a packet of peanut butter crackers beside my keyboard. "You skipped lunch again," she said. I had a reconciliation issue. "You had a husband issue." I looked at her. She lifted one shoulder. "You've been looking at your phone like it owes you an apology." I smiled despite myself. "I'm fine." That answer should come with a warning label. I opened the crackers. Tasha did not press me. That was one of the things I loved about her. She left the door open without dragging me through it. But that night on the drive home, I thought about telling her everything. I thought about the engagement dinner, the family photograph, the way Mason had begun saying when we sell the farm instead of if Rachel ever wants to sell. The way Denise had called me 2 days earlier and said, "A property like that is wasted sitting empty." I had told her it was not empty. I went there twice a month. A neighboring farmer checked the trees. I paid the taxes, repaired what I could, and kept June's kitchen exactly as she had left it. Denise had made a small, impatient sound. "You're holding on to a museum because you're afraid to move forward. It's my home. Your home is with my son." I remember standing in the school district parking garage with my phone pressed to my ear, feeling something inside me go still. "My home can be more than one place," I said. "Not if you want a healthy marriage." Then she added with the gentle cruelty she used when she wanted to sound wise, "Men get tired of competing with dead people, Rachel." I ended the call without replying. For 3 days, I did not tell Mason what she had said. When I finally did, he shrugged. "She's worried about us. She told me your marriage is unhealthy because I won't sell my grandmother's farm." That's not what she meant. It is exactly what she meant. He shut the refrigerator harder than necessary. "You know what? Maybe she's tired of watching me struggle while you sit on $500,000. There it was. Not concern, not grief, not family. Money. I stared at him across the kitchen. "Hawthorne Farm is not $500,000 to me." "That doesn't mean it isn't worth $500,000. We are not selling it." He laughed sharply. "I thought it was yours." I should have understood then. I should have understood that Mason did not resent being excluded from ownership. He resented being excluded from control. Instead, I did what I had been trained to do in that family. I lowered my voice. I tried to make the room calm. I explained that the farm was the last piece of June I had. I reminded him that we had discussed this before marriage. I promised we could make a separate plan for our finances. I offered to help him update his resume. I offered solutions to a problem that was not actually the problem. The problem was that Mason believed my love should eventually make everything I owned available to him. And when it did not, he began treating my boundaries like betrayal. The old man appeared on a Wednesday afternoon in September. My office was in a district building near South Boulevard, and I usually walked 4 blocks to the light rail station after work. The route crossed a wide intersection where traffic turned quickly, and drivers watched the signal more carefully than they watched people. He stood at the curb with a canvas grocery bag in one hand and a folded cane in the other. He was tall but bent slightly at the shoulders, with a brown flat cap and a navy jacket worn shiny at the elbows. The pedestrian signal changed, but he did not move. Cars began turning. I stepped beside him. "Would you like an arm?" He looked at me with clear gray eyes. "That would help," he said. His voice was low and steady. I offered my left arm. He placed his hand lightly above my wrist, and we stepped off the curb together. Halfway across, the signal began counting down. He moved slowly, but not helplessly. There was something deliberate about him, as though he measured every step before taking it. When we reached the other side, I expected him to thank me and continue walking. Instead, he kept hold of my arm. "Rachel," he said. I froze. I was not wearing a name badge. My work identification was inside my purse. I had never seen him before. "How do you know my name?" He ignored the question. "When your husband gives you earrings, don't put them on." For a second, the traffic noise seemed to drop away. "What?" "Put them in warm water overnight. Use a plain glass. Don't touch the post after." My skin prickled. "I don't understand." "You will. Who are you?" He looked toward the station, then back at me. "Someone asked me to make sure you got a warning." "Who?" He released my arm. "Do you remember your grandmother telling you that help does not always arrive in a form you recognize?" My throat tightened. June had said something like that many times. Not those exact words, but close enough that I felt the sidewalk tilt beneath me. "Did you know June?" He gave me a tired, almost sad smile. "Not as well as I wish I had." Then he walked away. I followed him for several steps. "Wait, what is your name?" "Arthur." "Arthur what?" He did not answer. A group of commuters moved between us. A train arrived with a metallic rush. By the time the doors opened and people spilled onto the platform, he was gone. I rode home with my hands clenched around my purse. I told myself Arthur had seen my name somewhere. Maybe my employee badge had shown when I opened my bag. Maybe he was confused. Maybe it was a cruel prank. But the warning frightened me because it landed on top of doubts I had already been carrying. There had been signs, not signs that Mason would ever try to hurt me, but signs that he had begun treating my grief, my work, and my property as things he was entitled to manage. The first appeared at June's funeral. Mason was wonderful that day. That is important to say. He drove me to Hendersonville before sunrise. He made sure I ate half a biscuit before the service. When my father arrived 40 minutes late with his second wife and asked whether June had left anything complicated behind, Mason stepped between us and said, "Today is not the day." I remember looking at him with gratitude so sharp it hurt. During the burial, he held my hand. That evening, after everyone left, I sat on June's porch wrapped in one of her old quilts. Mason brought coffee and sat beside me without speaking. He did not ask when we were leaving. He did not check his phone. He gave me exactly the kind of quiet I needed. For months afterward, whenever something between us felt wrong, I returned to that memory as evidence. He had loved me. He had protected me. He had sat beside me on June's porch. A single good memory can become a locked room. You keep going back inside because the person you loved still lives there, even after he has stopped living anywhere else. The first conversation about selling the farm happened 3 weeks after the funeral. We were at Denise's house for Sunday lunch. She had made pot roast. Kelsey was scrolling through real estate listings on her phone. Denise said, "Have you thought about what you'll do with the property?" "I'm keeping it." She smiled as if I had given a child's answer. "For now, of course." "No, I'm keeping it." Mason touched my knee under the table. Not affection, a warning to be easier. Denise tilted her head. "Honey, grief makes us attach meaning to objects." "It isn't an object. It's a house you don't live in. It is land my family has cared for 3 generations." Kelsey looked up from her phone. "Do you know what 7 acres near Hendersonville is worth now?" "Yes. You could pay off everything." At that time, Mason and I did not have much debt. A car loan. A small credit card balance. Nothing close to the value of the farm. What would we do after paying off everything, I asked. Kelsey shrugged. "Live." I looked at Mason. He said no one is making a decision today. That sounded supportive. What he did not say was Rachel has already made the decision. Later in the car, he told me I had embarrassed his mother. I answered her question. "You answered like she was trying to rob you." She asked me to sell my grandmother's home 3 weeks after the funeral. She was trying to help. Help me do what? Think practically. There was that word. Practical. In the Reed family, practical always meant that I gave something and they received it. Over the next year, the suggestions became jokes. When our car needed brakes, Mason said, "Good thing we have an apple orchard." When Denise's roof leaked, she said, "If only someone in this family were sitting on valuable real estate." When Kelsey's event company lost a large account, she posted a photograph of the Hawthorne barn and wrote, "Imagine what this could become with a little vision." I asked her to remove it. She did, but only after Mason called me controlling. Mason had not given me jewelry in almost 3 years. The last gift he bought me was a grocery store orchid on our anniversary, and I later found the charge on my own card. By the time I reached our townhouse, I had almost convinced myself Arthur's warning meant nothing. Then I opened the front door and smelled unfamiliar cologne. Mason stood in the hallway wearing a white button-down shirt I had never seen. He had shaved closely. His hair was combed. The living room lights were dimmed, and a takeout bag from my favorite Italian restaurant sat on the kitchen counter. In his hand was a small black box. For one strange second, I wondered whether I had somehow fallen into the old man's story simply by hearing it. Mason smiled. There she is. I did not move. What's all this? Can't a husband do something nice? He crossed the hallway and kissed my cheek. His lips barely touched me. Then he held out the box. I saw these and thought of you. Inside were silver drop earrings, simple and elegant with small blue stones at the bottom. They were exactly the kind of thing I would have chosen for myself. That frightened me more than if they had been ugly. Try them on, he said. I lifted one from the velvet. The metal post looked slightly thicker than normal. Arthur's voice returned so clearly that it felt like someone speaking beside me. Don't touch the posts after. I set the earring back into the box. They're beautiful. Put them on. I've been wearing cheap studs all day. My ears are sore. His smile stayed in place, but something behind it tightened. It'll take 2 seconds. I want to shower first. Rachel. He said my name lightly, but there was pressure under it. I looked up. His eyes were not on my face. They were on my ears. I smiled. It was the first lie I told him with complete calm. I'll wear them tomorrow night to dinner with your family. They deserve more than my wrinkled work blouse. He held my gaze for a beat too long. Then he nodded. Tomorrow night, he said. The dinner on the counter was not romantic. It was a meeting disguised as chicken parmesan. Mason poured wine, so he knew I rarely drank on work nights. He asked about my day with an attention so deliberate it made me uncomfortable. Halfway through the meal, he reached across the table and touched my hand. Mom found someone interested in the farm. I pulled my hand away. The farm is not for sale. He's a developer from Asheville. He'd keep the house. Number. You haven't even heard the offer. I don't need to. Mason leaned back. The warmth disappeared from his face. Kelsey has already moved her wedding twice because you won't commit. Kelsey announced she was using my barn without asking me. Everything with you is my. I almost laughed. My salary, my credit, my car, my grandmother's property, my payment for his sister's engagement dinner. But in the Reed family, I was selfish for naming any of it. Mason looked toward the black jewelry box on the counter. You used to care about making people happy. I still do. Not us. There was something cold in the way he said it. Not angry, measured, as if he had reached a conclusion. After dinner, he carried his plate to the sink and left mine on the table. I washed both. At 11, Mason fell asleep within minutes. I lay beside him listening to the steady sound of his breathing. At midnight, I got up. I took the earrings from the box using a clean washcloth. I filled one of June's old ceramic coffee mugs with warm water because I could not find a plain glass without turning on the kitchen light. The mug was pale yellow, with tiny apples painted around the rim. I had brought it home after June died, one of the ordinary objects I could not bear to leave behind. I lowered the earrings into the water. They sank without a sound. For several minutes, nothing happened. I almost felt foolish. Then a faint thread drifted from one post like smoke underwater. I covered the mug with a saucer and placed it inside the bathroom cabinet behind extra towels. When I returned to bed, Mason had rolled onto my side. His hand rested where my shoulder had been. I stood in the doorway looking at him. I remembered the man who drove through a storm to fix June's screen door. I remembered how he held me at her funeral. I remembered the first year of our marriage when we ate pizza on the floor because we had no dining table and believed love made a room complete. Then I looked at the man in my bed and wondered whether those memories belonged to me or to someone I no longer was. While the earrings sat in warm water behind the bathroom towels, sleep would not come. Memory moved backward through every moment I had called too small to matter. Each one looked different now. Then came Thanksgiving. June had been gone 8 months. I offered to host at the farm because being in her kitchen felt less painful than spending the holiday at Denise's house pretending not to miss her. I drove up 2 days early. I cleaned every room. I made June's cornbread dressing, 2 pies green beans with bacon, sweet potatoes, cranberry sauce, and enough biscuits for 20 people. Mason promised to arrive Wednesday night. He arrived Thursday morning with Denise, Kelsey, Brandon, 3 folding tables, and 40 chair covers from their event business. "What is all this?" I asked. Denise kissed my cheek. "We thought we'd take family Christmas pictures in the barn after dinner." "No one asked me." "It's a photograph, Rachel." Kelsey carried in a box of artificial garland. "We're already here." That sentence, "we're already here," became another Reed family tool. They crossed the boundary first, then used the inconvenience of undoing it as the reason I should accept it. After dinner, they rearranged the barn. They moved June's workbench against the wall. They covered old farm tables with white linens. They hung a gold fabric backdrop from 2 beams. I stood near the door holding a trash bag while Kelsey directed everyone into position. "Immediate family first," she said. I thought she meant before adding Brandon. I stepped toward Mason. Kelsey lifted her hand. "Can you take this one?" She held out her phone. I looked at her. "You want me to take the picture?" "Just the Reed family, then we'll do another." Denise, Mason, Kelsey, and an uncle stood in front of the gold backdrop. Brandon remained beside me because he was not yet married to Kelsey. I took the photograph. Then an aunt needed help finding her coat. Someone asked where the leftover pie boxes were. By the time I returned, Kelsey had removed the backdrop. There was no second picture. A week later, Denise mailed Christmas cards. The photograph I took at my grandmother's farm appeared on the front beneath the words, "Family is home." My name was printed inside the card as part of the signature. "Love, Denise, Mason, Rachel, Kelsey, and Brandon." I existed in ink, not in the image. When I told Mason how much it hurt, he said, "You were there." That is the point. I was there and they used me to take the picture. "You're acting like they cut you out." They did. "No, you were behind the camera." Sometimes erasure is explained so literally that you begin to wonder whether pain requires better vocabulary. A few months later, Mason left his job at the appliance store. He said his manager had humiliated him in front of customers. I believed him because I had heard the manager speak sharply to staff before. For the first 6 weeks, Mason applied for jobs. I helped with his resume. We sat at the kitchen table while he practiced interview answers. I paid for a new jacket because he said his old one made him look unsuccessful. Then the interviews slowed. He began sleeping later. Every opportunity had a flaw. One company required Saturdays. Another offered too little. One position involved commission. Another did not involve enough commission. When I suggested temporary work, he stared at me as if I had insulted him. "My mother is right," he said. "You don't respect me." I had no idea Denise and he were discussing me. That discovery came accidentally. Mason left his tablet on the couch one afternoon while he showered. A message appeared across the screen. "Mom, she likes having you dependent. It gives her control." I did not open the conversation. I did not invade his privacy. That was how I described my choice then. Now I understand that I had been taught to treat the evidence in front of me as a locked door I was morally forbidden to touch. When he returned, I said, "Your mom thinks I like you being unemployed." He stopped. "You read my messages." One appeared on the screen. "So you read it." I saw one sentence. He snatched up the tablet. "You have no boundaries." The accusation was so immediate that I ended up defending myself. Within 5 minutes, the subject was no longer what Denise said about me. The subject was whether I respected Mason's privacy. I apologized. The next Sunday, Denise hugged me warmly and asked whether payroll work was still keeping me busy. I looked into her face and wondered how a person could speak badly about me on Tuesday and ask me to pass the potatoes on Sunday. Then I passed the potatoes. That was what I did. The financial dependence deepened quietly. Mason began using our joint credit card for lunches, gas streaming subscriptions, and purchases he called networking. A $200 charge appeared from a rooftop bar. He said he had met a contractor. A charge from a boutique hotel appeared 3 months later. He said Kelsey had booked a room for a bridal photo shoot and accidentally used his card. Kelsey confirmed the story before I asked her. That should have told me they had prepared it together. Instead, I felt guilty for being suspicious. When I requested separate cards, Denise called the next day. "Mason says you're restricting his access to money. I'm asking him to discuss large expenses. He is your husband, not your child." Then he should contribute like an adult. She became quiet. Marriage is not a transaction. Only people receiving unpaid labor say that when the person providing it begins counting. I did not say that. I said I know. By the time Kelsey became engaged, the family had built an entire moral structure around my resources. My salary was marital support. My credit was shared trust. My farm was family opportunity. My time was flexibility. Their money, however, remained complicated. Denise's business accounts were private. Kelsey's wedding budget was none of my concern until a deposit was due. Mason's spending was dignity. I began to understand that I was not included in the Reed family as a daughter, sister, or wife. I was included as infrastructure. You do not thank a bridge for holding weight. You become angry when it refuses. The night before the old man appeared, Mason and I had our worst argument yet. I came home to find Kelsey and Kayla in our living room. Fabric samples covered the coffee table. A bottle of wine stood open. Mason was pouring 3 glasses. "Surprise," Kelsey said. "We're doing wedding vision night. In my house." Mason frowned. "Our house." I set down my bag. "I thought you were meeting a friend about work." "This is work," he said. "Mom wants me to help expand the venue side." Kayla lifted a roll of ivory fabric. "Some properties need someone willing to turn grief into something useful," she said. The words were wrapped in concern, but they did not feel kind. "We were talking about the barn." I looked at her. "Why?" Kelsey laughed. "Because it's perfect." I already said no. "You said the wiring was bad." I said no. The room tightened. Kayla placed the fabric on the table with careful hands. Mason poured the 4th glass of wine and held it toward me. "Sit down." "I don't want wine." "Then don't drink it. Just stop walking in ready for a fight." I stared at him. I walked into my home and found 3 people planning to use my property after I said no. Kelsey's face reddened. "I am so tired of hearing my property." "Then stop asking for it." She stood. "You know what, I hope you enjoy sitting alone in that old house one day, because this is what you do. You make everything so uncomfortable that people eventually stop trying." She gathered the fabric samples. Kayla stood too. For one brief second, she looked at Mason with an intimacy I could not name then. Not a glance between friends. A silent check. "Are you coming? Are we leaving together?" Mason saw me see it. He turned away first. After they left, he said, "You owe my sister an apology." Number. She was excited. She ignored my answer. "You always need control." The accusation was almost absurd. I had spent 14 months carrying a man who said my refusal to give away a farm proved I needed control. "I need sleep," I said. He followed me upstairs. "That's it. You shut down. I am not discussing this while you are angry. I am angry because I am tired of being second to a dead woman." I stopped on the stairs. "Do not talk about June that way. She left you a house and somehow left me a marriage where every decision has to pass through her memory. June is not making our decisions." "Exactly. You are. Alone." I looked down at him. The man on the lower step did not look like the husband from the funeral porch. He looked resentful, hungry, as though my grief had become an unlocked room he believed he should have access to. "I will never sell Hawthorne Farm to rescue people who refuse to change," I said. Mason's face went still. Then he smiled. Not warmly. "Never is a long time." At 6 the next morning, I woke before my alarm. The bathroom was cold. I locked the door and opened the cabinet. The water had changed completely. It was dark gray with a greenish film clinging to the sides of the mug. The blue stones looked dull beneath the surface. Along both posts ran narrow open seams. My knees weakened. I set the mug on the counter. For several seconds, I could hear nothing but my own breathing. Then came a knock. "Rachel." Mason's voice. I pressed both hands against the sink. "Yeah, you okay?" "I'm getting ready." A pause. "Did you try them on?" Not "good morning." Not "did you sleep well." "Did you try them on?" I looked at myself in the mirror. My face was pale, but my eyes were steady. "No," I said. "I'm saving them for tonight." Another pause. Then the doorknob moved slightly. I had locked it. "Open up," he said. "I need my toothbrush." I wrapped the mug in a hand towel and placed it in the cabinet under the sink. Then I opened the door. Mason stood in the hallway holding a cup of coffee. He looked past me into the bathroom. "You locked the door." "I was using the toilet." He smiled. "Since when do we lock doors?" "Since you handed me a weapon in a jewelry box," I thought. Instead, I stepped aside. "Your toothbrush is right there." He entered and picked it up. I watched him look at the counter, the sink, the medicine cabinet. He was searching without appearing to search. Then he turned to me. Wear your hair up tonight, he said. The earrings will show better. I smiled. Good idea. I left for work 40 minutes early. I did not take the light rail. I drove. The mug sat inside 2 sealed food containers in a grocery bag on the passenger floor. I called Tasha from the parking lot before going inside the office. She answered on the second ring. Did somebody die? What? You only call before 7 if somebody died or you need bail money. My throat closed. Tasha, I need you to listen without interrupting. She went quiet immediately. I told her about Arthur. I told her about the earrings. I told her what was in the mug. For almost a minute after I finished, there was silence. Then she said, do not go home tonight. I need to know what it is. Do not go home. If I disappear now, he'll know. Rachel, listen to yourself. I am listening. For the first time, I think I am listening. Tasha breathed out slowly. My cousin works for an environmental testing company near the airport. They handle contaminated materials. I'm calling him. I don't want your family involved. You called me. I'm involved. Her voice shook slightly, but she kept it firm. Bring the bag to work. Don't open it. Don't touch anything. And send me Mason's full name, his phone number, and your address. Why? So if you stop answering me, I know where to send people. That sentence made the situation real in a way the dark water had not. I closed my eyes. Okay. Say it like you mean it. Okay. Tasha's cousin arranged for the earrings and water to be accepted that morning. There were forms, but I barely remember them. I remember a woman wearing blue gloves taking the sealed containers. I remember her expression changing when she saw the liquid through the plastic. I remember Tasha standing beside me with her arms crossed. You are staying at my house, she said. I can't, not yet. Why not? Because tonight his whole family is expecting me. Exactly why you shouldn't go. I need to see what they know. Tasha stared at me. This is not one of your payroll discrepancies. You do not need to reconcile every line before protecting yourself. She was right. But I also knew the Reed family. If I failed to appear at dinner, Denise would come to the townhouse. Kelsey would call Mason. Mason would check the earrings. Whatever chance I had to understand the shape of what was happening would disappear. I'll sit near the door, I said. I won't eat anything Mason serves. I'll keep my phone on. I'll text you every 30 minutes. Tasha's jaw tightened. You have 1 hour. If you miss a check-in, I call the police. Agreed. And you are not sleeping at home. I looked at her. That is not negotiable. For once, I did not argue. At lunch, I drove to the discount department store and bought a pair of silver earrings with blue glass stones. They were not identical, but from a distance they were close enough. Before dinner, I pinned my hair up and put them on. Mason was waiting in the living room. The moment he saw me, his eyes moved to my ears. Relief crossed his face. It was brief, but I saw it. He stood and came closer. They look good, do they? He touched one earring. I forced myself not to flinch. Beautiful, he said. Then he kissed my forehead. We drove to Denise's house in silence. Her driveway was crowded. Kelsey's fiancé Brandon was there. So was an aunt I had met twice, 2 cousins, and Kayla. No one had told me this was more than a family dinner. Denise opened the door wearing a cream sweater and a smile she used when guests were watching. There she is. She hugged Mason first. Then she held my shoulders and looked at the earrings. Oh, those are lovely. Mason picked them, I said. I know. The answer came too quickly. I looked at her. She turned toward the dining room. Come in, we have news. The table was set with paper napkins printed with orange leaves. Kelsey had placed wedding magazines beside her plate. A roll of architectural paper leaned against the wall. Kayla sat 2 seats from Mason. When I entered, she looked at my earrings and lowered her eyes. That was the second moment I knew. The first was Mason's relief. The second was Kayla's fear. We had barely sat down before Kelsey unrolled the paper across the table. It was a sketch of Hawthorne Farm, my farmhouse, my barn, my grandmother's orchard. Someone had marked parking spaces across June's vegetable garden. The barn was labeled Ceremony and Reception. The front porch was labeled Bridal Entry. A rectangle beside the apple stand was labeled Permanent Event Storage. For several seconds, I could not speak. Kelsey mistook my silence for awe. Isn't it perfect? Who made this? Brandon's friend does venue layouts. You gave him measurements of my property. Mason had them. I turned to my husband. He picked up his water. Denise spoke before he did. We wanted to show you what's possible. No, I said quietly. You wanted to show me what you already decided. The aunt at the end of the table shifted uncomfortably. Kelsey rolled her eyes. Can we not do this tonight? You drew parking spaces over my grandmother's garden. It's weeds, Rachel. The room changed. Something about the casual way she said it cut through every layer of patience I had used to survive that family. June's garden had not been weeds. It had been Saturday mornings with dirt under my fingernails. It had been tomatoes wrapped in newspaper on the kitchen counter. It had been the place where June told me my father's leaving was not proof that I was difficult to love. I looked at Kelsey. You are not getting married at Hawthorne Farm. Her face hardened. Denise set down her fork. That is an incredibly selfish thing to say in front of everyone. It should never have been discussed in front of everyone. Mason said you were ready to be reasonable. Mason stared at his plate. I felt Tasha's phone in my purse vibrate. The 30-minute check-in. I reached down and typed safe. Denise continued. You have a valuable property sitting unused while this family is drowning. This family, our family. No, your business is struggling. Kelsey wants a wedding she cannot afford. Mason refuses to work unless the job flatters him. None of that makes my grandmother's home community property. Brandon looked down. One cousin stopped chewing. Kayla's face remained still, but her fingers tightened around her napkin. Mason's voice came low beside me. Enough. I turned toward him. You brought me here to be cornered. We brought you here because every private conversation turns into you shutting down. I say no, you call that shutting down. You don't care what happens to anyone but yourself. The sentence was sharp enough to silence the table. I looked at the man I had loved. What happens to me, Mason? He blinked. What? You said I don't care what happens to anyone. What happens to me in this plan? Denise gave a short laugh. You receive more money than most people see in a lifetime. And where do I live? With your husband. In the townhouse I pay for. Mason's face flushed. Kelsey leaned forward. Why are you humiliating him? I almost answered. Then Kayla spoke for the first time. Maybe Rachel is tired. The table went still in a different way. Her voice was soft, but the word landed like a signal. Tired. Mason looked at her. Denise looked at Mason. Then all three looked at me. I felt cold beneath my skin. Mason placed his hand on my back. You have seemed run down lately. I moved away from his touch. I'm fine. You're working too much, Denise said. Stress can make people irrational. There it was. Not just a plan for the farm. A story they were already preparing about me. Rachel is tired. Rachel is stressed. Rachel is emotional. Rachel cannot manage the property. Rachel should let Mason handle things. I looked around the table at the sketches, the wedding magazines, the people eating food beneath Denise's warm pendant lights. They had begun living in my future without me. Kelsey had planned her wedding. Denise had planned storage for her business. Mason had planned the sale. Kayla had planned what would happen to my body. And I had been invited to dinner only because they needed my agreement or my decline to look natural. I stood. I need some air. Mason reached for my wrist. Sit down. I looked at his hand until he released me. Then I walked through the kitchen and out the back door. The night was cool. Denise's patio lights glowed above a row of empty planters. I crossed the yard toward the side gate and heard the door open behind me. At first, I thought Mason had followed. It was Denise. She shut the door and folded her arms. You embarrassed my son. He embarrassed himself. You have no idea what he has sacrificed for you. I turned. What has he sacrificed? His confidence, his plans, his place as a husband. Because I won't sell something that is mine. Because you never let him lead. I laughed once. The sound surprised both of us. Lead where he does not work. He does not pay rent. He does not make dinner unless he wants something. He lies about where he goes. What exactly am I refusing to follow? Denise's face changed. For one moment, the polished maternal concern disappeared. Underneath it was contempt. You think a paycheck makes you better than him? No, I think showing up matters. He would show up if you stopped making him feel useless. I stared at her. This was the family's deepest belief. Mason's failures were evidence that someone else had failed him. Usually me. Denise stepped closer. Kelsey needs that farm. The business needs that farm. Mason needs a fresh start. You are one person holding up an entire family because you cannot let go of a dead woman's house. She was my grandmother. She is gone. The words came flat and brutal. You keep acting like grief gives you permanent authority over everyone else. I felt the old instinct to shrink, to calm her, to protect the evening. Then I remembered the mug in the testing lab. I remembered Kayla watching my ears. I said Hawthorne Farm is not for sale. Denise's mouth tightened. Once you finally slow down, Mason can handle the farm the way a husband should. The night seemed to stop. What do you mean once I slow down? Her expression shifted. Only slightly. Everyone can see you are exhausted. And you have already decided what happens when I am. You're twisting my words. The same door Mason always used. Not everything is an attack. You're reading too much into it. You're twisting my words. I took out my phone. Denise looked at it. What are you doing? Calling a ride. Mason brought you. I'm not leaving with Mason. Her face went pale, then angry. Do not create a spectacle. I think your family has done enough creating for one night. I walked through the side gate. Tasha was already on her way. She had received my message, come now. I waited under a street light at the end of Denise's block. Mason called 4 times. Kelsey sent 3 messages. The first said, "Are you serious?" The second said, "You ruin everything." The third said, "Mom is crying." No one asked whether I was safe. Tasha pulled up 9 minutes later in sweatpants and a denim jacket. Her teenage son in the passenger seat, because she had not wanted to leave him alone. He climbed into the back without asking questions. I got in. Tasha looked at my face, then at the earrings. Those the fake ones. Yes, take them off anyway. I did. She drove me to her house. At 11:30, Mason texted, "You made me look like a monster." I stared at the message. Then I typed, "I didn't make you look like anything." I did not send it. Tasha made up the couch with clean sheets. Her daughter left a glass of water and a phone charger on the side table. The kindness of those small things nearly broke me. I had spent years being told that family was whoever demanded the most. That night, a woman who owed me nothing gave me her couch, her charger, and the safest room I had slept in for months. At 2 in the morning, I heard Tasha moving in the kitchen. I found her making tea. "You should sleep," I said. "So should you." I sat at the table. For a while, neither of us spoke. Then I told her what Denise had said. "You may feel differently when you are not well enough." Tasha set down the spoon. She knows. I don't know how much. She knows enough. I think Kayla is involved. The woman from the pictures. I nodded. Mason kept looking at her. She looked at the earrings. She said I looked tired. Tasha's eyes hardened. "What do you need from me?" The question was so different from "what is wrong with you" that I could barely answer. "I need to make it to the morning." Done. "And after that, we make it to lunch." I looked down at my hands. "I feel stupid." Number. "I saw things." "You saw pieces. They trained you to doubt the picture." I defended him. That is what loyal people do until loyalty becomes dangerous. Tasha reached across the table. "Rachel, believing someone you love is not stupidity. Using that belief against you is cruelty. Put the shame where it belongs." I cried then. Not loudly. I sat at her kitchen table and cried into both hands while the house slept around us. The next morning, the testing company called. The woman who spoke to me asked whether I was alone. I said no. She told me the earrings contained a toxic industrial compound embedded inside the hollow posts. Warmth had broken down the seal. Prolonged skin contact could have caused serious illness. She did not give me a dramatic speech. She said, "You need to contact law enforcement and you should not return to the home alone." The simplicity of that sentence made my fear solid. Tasha drove me to a police station. A detective named Elena Ruiz met us in a small interview room. She was in her early 40s with tired eyes and a voice that made no promises she could not keep. I told the story from the beginning. She listened without interrupting. When I reached the family dinner, she asked me to repeat Denise's exact words. I did. "Did anyone know you had not worn the original earrings?" Number. "Does your husband believe you wore them?" Yes. "Does he know you stayed with Ms. Green?" He knows I left with her. He thinks I'm angry about the farm. Detective Ruiz closed her notebook. "You are not going back to that house today." I nodded. For the next 10 days, I lived between 2 lives. In one, I went to work, answered payroll questions, signed forms, and sat beside Tasha at lunch. In the other, I helped Detective Ruiz understand the man I had married. I provided dates, messages, family photographs, and the name of Kayla's employer. I showed her the farm layout Kelsey had sent to the family group chat after dinner with the caption, "Once Rachel calms down." I did not drown in paperwork. I did not become a detective. I simply stopped protecting Mason from the truth. The hardest part was pretending he still had access to me. Ruiz asked me not to block him yet, so I replied carefully, I'm safe. I need space. I'll come home when I'm ready. Mason shifted between tenderness and blame. I miss you. Mom didn't mean it. You humiliated me. We can fix this. You're overreacting. Why are you punishing everyone? Then on the fourth day, he wrote, Have you been feeling okay? I stared at the screen until the letters blurred. I replied, just tired. His answer came in less than a minute. You should let me take care of things. That was the plan in one sentence. Not I hope you feel better. Not see a doctor. Let me take care of things. On the fifth day, Kelsey posted a photograph of Hawthorne Farm that she had taken months earlier without telling me. Over it, she placed a digital drawing of string lights and white chairs. She captioned it, Some people hold on to empty things so tightly they forget other people have dreams too. Dozens of friends commented heart emojis. One wrote, Family should come first. Another wrote, Your day will happen exactly where it's meant to. I almost responded. Then Tasha took my phone. Do not fight people who only know the version of you they were fed. I look cruel. To strangers. Kelsey is making me look like I stole her wedding. She tried to steal your home. The sixth day, Denise called from a number I did not recognize. I answered because Detective Ruiz had asked me to document communication. Denise did not say hello. How long are you planning to punish my son? I'm not punishing him. He has not eaten. I knew that was not true. Mason had charged takeout twice to our joint card. He is 38 years old. He is your husband, and I am his wife. Did you call to ask whether I had eaten? Silence. Then I'm trying to keep this family together. By planning what happens to my property when I get sick. Her breath changed. I told you misunderstood. What did you mean? You work too much. You are exhausted. Everyone sees it. Kayla sees it. Another pause. That was answer enough. I said, How long has she been sleeping with Mason? Denise inhaled sharply. Then her voice became cold. Be very careful, Rachel. No, I have been careful for years. It has only made all of you bolder. You have no proof of anything. I didn't ask whether I had proof. She hung up. I sat in Tasha's car outside the district office with the phone in my lap. Tasha looked over. She knew about the affair. Yes. Did she know about the earrings? I don't know. Does it matter? It mattered legally. Emotionally, the distinction had already narrowed. Denise knew another woman was sitting beside my husband in family photographs. She knew they were planning my property without me. She knew they were waiting for me to become weak. Whether she understood how Mason intended to make that happen did not erase the rest. On the seventh day, Detective Ruiz showed me a photograph. It had been taken from a restaurant security camera 6 months earlier. Mason and Kayla sat in a booth. Their hands were joined across the table. I expected the image to destroy me. Instead, I felt an exhausted calm. I had made dinner that night. I remembered because Mason had texted that he was meeting someone about a job. I cooked chili and kept it warm until 11. When he came home, he said the meeting had gone badly and asked why I had not waited to eat. I apologized. That memory hurt more than the photograph. Not because he had been with her, because I had apologized. Ruiz placed a second image on the table. Kayla entering a jewelry repair shop near Pineville with a small box. A week later, Mason entered the same shop. The owner remembered them. Kayla had described the modification as a skin delivery prototype for a private product idea. Mason had provided the earrings and paid cash. The owner had not known what was inside the posts, but an older woman visiting the shop had seen the work. Her name was Ruth Calder. The moment Ruiz said it, I felt June in the room. Ruth, I repeated. You know her? Maybe. My grandmother had a friend named Ruth when I was little. She repaired jewelry. Ruiz nodded. We have not reached her yet. The shop owner said she seemed alarmed. She asked for Mason's name and said she knew someone connected to Hawthorne Farm. Arthur. The crosswalk. The warning. I closed my eyes. June had been dead for 3 years. Still somehow someone who loved her had been watching. The 8th day began with rain. I woke on Tasha's couch before 5 and listened to water tapping against the living room windows. For a few seconds, I did not know where I was. Then I saw the folded blanket, the family photographs on the wall, and the sneakers her son had left beside the stairs. Safety felt unfamiliar enough to confuse me. My phone showed 12 missed notifications. Mason had sent a photograph of our kitchen table. 2 plates sat across from each other. He had placed the black jewelry box beside my plate. Come home, I made breakfast. The image looked almost tender. That was what disturbed me. The eggs were arranged neatly. Coffee waited in my favorite mug. The table where he had ignored me for months had become a stage for concern the moment I stopped appearing in my assigned role. I showed Tasha. She studied the picture. He wants an audience. He wants to see whether I'm sick. Same thing to him now. At work, I made 3 payroll mistakes before 9:30. They were small and correctable, but each one frightened me. I had always trusted my mind. Mason and Kayla had planned to make me doubt it. Now fear alone was doing part of their work. I went into the restroom and stood at the sink. For one terrible moment, I imagined the earrings against my skin. Would I already be tired? Would my hands ache? Would I blame stress? Would Denise call and say, "We told you to slow down"? I splashed cold water on my face. Tasha entered behind me. You disappeared. I made mistakes. You're under pressure. What if I start becoming exactly the person they plan to describe? She leaned against the counter. Scared people lose focus. That is not the same as being incapable. It feels the same. Then borrow my judgment until yours feels steady. The phrase stayed with me. Borrow my judgment. I had always treated dependence as danger because Mason used it that way. Tasha showed me another kind, temporary, respectful, freely offered. That afternoon, Detective Ruiz asked me to review shared bank activity. It was not complicated forensic work. We sat in a small office while I recognized ordinary purchases. Dinner at a restaurant I had never visited. Gas near Kayla's apartment. A jewelry repair charge disguised under a generic payment service name. A storage unit payment to Denise's business from our joint account. I didn't approve that, I said. How much control did Mr. Reed have over the account? He had a debit card. We agreed to discuss anything over $100. Did he? Not for a long time. I found transfers to Kelsey labeled Farm Prep. My stomach turned. They had spent my household money preparing to use my property. Ruiz asked, "Do you recognize this hardware store charge?" I did. 3 months earlier, Mason had said he bought supplies to repair our townhouse railing. The railing had never been repaired. The store was near Hendersonville. I called May Collins. Has Mason been to the farm without me? May was silent. Twice that I saw. When? She gave me dates. Both matched days Mason claimed to be at job interviews. What did he do? Walked the barn, took measurements. One time he had that young dark-haired woman with him. Kayla, why didn't you call me? I asked him whether you knew. He said you were planning a surprise. May's voice tightened. I should have called. He was my husband. You had a reason to believe him. Being your husband gave him a reason to be there, not a reason to lie. I wrote down the dates. Before hanging up, May said June never trusted that boy's mother. I closed my eyes. She never told me. She didn't want to make you defend him. That sounded exactly like June. She had understood something I did not. When people are not ready to see direct criticism, can make them grip the illusion harder. What did she say? That Denise looked at the farm the way a hungry person looks through a bakery window. Despite everything, I smiled. June could turn suspicion into a sentence you remembered for years. That evening, Kelsey called. Her voice was softer than it had been since the engagement dinner. I don't want to fight. Then don't. I think everybody is scared. Of what? Losing everything. I sat in Tasha's parked car outside her house. What do you think I am afraid of losing? Kelsey hesitated. Your farm. My husband tried to make me sick. She inhaled. At that point, I did not know whether police had told her enough to understand. Her pause told me Mason had said something. He says you're confused, she whispered. Do I sound confused? Number. Did he tell you the earrings were tested? He said you contaminated them because you wanted leverage in the divorce. The ease of the lie stunned me. I filed nothing. I have asked him for nothing. What leverage? I don't know. You know he is sleeping with Kayla. Silence. I continued. You knew before the engagement dinner. She and Mason have a connection. He is married. You two haven't been happy. That was not Kayla's decision to solve. Kelsey's voice sharpened. You pushed him away. There it was again, 'cause moved backward until it reached me. Mason lied because I questioned him. He cheated because I was distant. He depended on me because I controlled him. He planned to use my illness because I would not share. Kelsey, did you know he and Kayla went to the farm together? Number. Did you know he moved money from our account to your mother's business? That was for wedding preparation. Preparation I refused. Mason said you would come around. Why did all of you believe his promise mattered more than my answer? She began crying. This was supposed to be the best year of my life. I felt the pull of old training. Comfort her. Explain gently. Protect the bride. Then I pictured the farm diagram. The garden labeled parking. This was my life before it was your wedding, I said. She hung up. That night I dreamed June stood in the barn taking down white chair covers one by one. Each time she removed one, another appeared. I woke with my heart racing. Tasha found me sitting on the floor beside the couch. I'm sorry, I whispered. For what? Waking you. You are having a crisis in my living room. It is allowed to make noise. I laughed and cried at the same time. She sat beside me. I keep thinking about how normal they looked, I said. At dinner, in pictures. They were planning all of this and they looked normal. Cruel people buy groceries. What? They go to work. They complain about traffic. They take Christmas pictures. We expect evil to look separate from ordinary life because that would make it easier to identify. She rested her head against the couch. Most dangerous things still have to take out the trash. The 9th day, Mason sent flowers to my office. White roses. The card read, "Come home to your husband." Several co-workers gathered near my desk. One said, "That is so romantic." Another asked whether it was our anniversary. I looked at the flowers and felt trapped inside a story everyone understood incorrectly. Tasha picked up the arrangement. Where are you taking those? Someone asked. Allergies, she said. She carried them to the break room and dropped them into the trash. I followed her. That looked cruel. Good. What if people think? She turned. Stop managing the jury in a trial that does not exist. I stared at her. You are allowed to throw away flowers from a man who tried to poison you. The sentence was so clear that I almost laughed. I took the card from the arrangement and gave it to Detective Ruiz. Later that afternoon, Mason's father called me. I rarely spoke to Frank Reed. He and Denise had been divorced for 12 years. He lived near Raleigh and visited at Christmas. His voice sounded tired. Mason says you've accused him of something terrible. I have not accused him. A test found a toxic substance in earrings he gave me. Frank was quiet. Did he know? Yes. You're sure? Yes. He exhaled. I'm sorry. Not. Why did you make him do it? Not, are you overreacting? I gripped the phone. Did you know about Kayla? No. I knew Denise and Kelsey were pushing about the farm. Did you ever tell them to stop? I stay out of their business. The sentence disappointed me more than anger would have. Staying out of it had become a respectable name for leaving me alone inside it. Frank, when someone is being cornered, neutrality helps the people doing the cornering. I didn't know it was this bad. You knew it was wrong. He did not answer. Before hanging up, he said Mason was not always like this. I know. The fact that everyone kept offering me his earlier self as if I could live there made me tired. That evening, Detective Ruiz told me they had recovered messages between Mason and Kayla through a warrant. She did not show me all of them. She read only what I needed to understand. Kayla had written, "How long before she feels it?" Mason had replied, "Long enough that no one connects it to the gift." Another message said, "Mom thinks Rachel will sell once she cannot keep up with work and the farm." Kayla responded, "Then your sister gets her wedding, and we get our start." Our start. They had built a romance around my decline. I asked Ruiz to stop reading. She closed the folder. Are you all right? Number. It was becoming easier to tell the truth. She waited. I keep wanting there to be a version where he didn't understand. There may be things about his thinking we never understand. That isn't what I mean. I want one message where he hesitates. Ruiz's expression softened. Wanting that does not mean it exists. I looked toward the dark window. How do people go from loving someone to planning this? Usually one selfish permission at a time. That answer followed me home. One permission at a time. Permission to let me pay. Permission to lie about a charge. Permission to let his mother insult me. Permission to let Kelsey use the farm in her imagination. Permission to sleep with Kayla. Permission to call me cold so he could feel warm. Permission to decide that what I would not give freely could be taken from a weaker version of me. No single permission had looked like the final crime. Together they built it. The next escalation did not come from Detective Ruiz. It came from Instagram. I was at Tasha's kitchen table late Friday afternoon, trying to answer a routine email about substitute teacher deductions when her daughter walked in holding her phone. Isn't this your farm? She turned the screen toward me. Kelsey was broadcasting live from Hawthorne Farm. For 1 second, my mind refused to understand what I was seeing. Then the camera moved across June's barn. White folding chairs stood in 2 neat rows. A portable arch had been raised beneath the main beam. Gold fabric covered June's workbench. Someone had placed eucalyptus garlands along the old apple crates. Kelsey's voice floated over the video. We're doing a tiny family preview today. Nothing official yet, but sometimes you have to let people see the dream before they stop being afraid of it. Comments climbed the side of the screen. So beautiful. Your sister-in-law is lucky to have you bringing the place back to life. Family property should create family memories. Then the camera turned. Denise stood beside the barn doors, directing 2 delivery workers. Kayla was arranging sample skincare bottles on a farm table. Mason carried a box labeled Reed Events from the back of Denise's SUV. The sight of him at my farm did something the laboratory report had not. The report had frightened me. This made me furious. They were not waiting for me to become weak anymore. They were practicing my absence. Tasha reached across the table and stopped the video. Call Ruiz. Before I could, my phone rang. May Collins, I answered. Rachel, there are people at the barn. I know. They told me you approved a private showing. I did not. May lowered her voice. Mason has a key. I closed my eyes. A year earlier, I had given him a spare because he said husbands should not have to ask permission to enter a family home. Do not confront them, I said. I already told your mother-in-law to get those plastic vines off June's tools. Despite everything, I almost smiled. May, I have not hit anyone. Please keep it that way. No promises about the vines. Detective Ruiz answered on the first ring. She told me officers could meet us near the property, but she did not want an arrest based only on the earrings until the search work was complete. Do not reveal what we have, she said. Do not tell Mason what Kayla's employer confirmed. Do not touch anything they brought. I need them out of my barn. You can tell them to leave. You cannot turn it into an interrogation. I understand. Tasha was already grabbing her keys. The drive to Hendersonville took 1 hour and 48 minutes. I remember because every minute felt like something being taken. Kelsey's live video ended after 23 minutes, but people kept sharing clips. In one, Kayla stood beside the farm table, holding a small amber bottle. She smiled into the camera and said, I can see a wellness studio here. Something quiet. Women come for a weekend reset and leave feeling like themselves again. My husband stood behind the camera. I heard his laugh. The sound was intimate, relaxed. The laugh he used to give me before our marriage became a room he no longer entered. Tasha glanced at me. You do not have to watch. I need to know what they think belongs to them. No, she said. You need to know enough. There is a difference. I put the phone face down. Rain had begun by the time we reached the mountain road. An unmarked car waited at a gas station 6 miles from the farm. Detective Ruiz stepped out and spoke to us through Tasha's open window. 2 officers will remain close. You tell them to leave. If they refuse or anyone touches you, step away. I want to go inside first. Why? To see what they moved. Ruiz looked at me for a moment. All right, 5 minutes. Ms. Green stays with you. Tasha nodded. I was planning to. When we turned onto the gravel lane, 4 vehicles were parked near the barn. Denise's SUV, Mason's sedan, Kelsey's car, Kayla's white crossover. The roadside apple sign had been turned outward even though the stand was closed. Someone had tied a cream ribbon around the fence post. It fluttered in the rain like the farm had agreed to celebrate. I parked behind Mason so he could not leave without asking me to move. The barn doors stood open. Music played from a portable speaker. For a few seconds, no one noticed us. Kelsey was photographing the arch. Denise was counting chair rows. Kayla had opened one of June's cupboards and was placing bottles inside. Mason stood at the workbench with a tape measure. I walked through the doors. Get out. The music continued for another beat. Then Kelsey turned. Her expression moved from surprise to irritation. What are you doing here? I looked around the barn. My question. Mason set down the tape measure. Rachel, calm down. There are phrases that tell you someone believes the room already belongs to him. Calm down was one. You entered my property without permission, I said. You moved my grandmother's things. You are broadcasting from my barn. Everyone leaves now. Denise approached with both palms lifted. This is exactly why we wanted to do a small preview first. You see a few chairs and act like someone burned the house down. You used a key I did not authorize Mason to use. He is your husband, she said. He is not the owner. Mason's face tightened. Tasha remained beside me silent. That silence helped. It meant I did not have to check whether I was imagining what was happening. Kelsey pointed at the chairs. We did not damage anything. You covered June's workbench. To protect it. You opened her cupboards. Kayla removed her hand from the cabinet door. I was only checking the storage. I turned to her. For your wellness studio, she looked at Mason. Not at Kelsey. Not at Denise. Mason. The same silent check I had seen in our living room. He stepped forward. Everybody is trying to find a way this property can help the family. It already helps my family. Who? Kelsey demanded. You come here twice a month and sit in an empty house. Mom could save her business. I could have my wedding. Mason could finally build something. Kayla has actual ideas for the space. The use of Kayla's name among those family plans made the affair visible even before anyone admitted it. I said, and what do I get? Kelsey threw up her hands. Money. A renovated property. A husband who does not feel useless. Mason's eyes flashed. Kelsey. But she had already said it. I looked at him. Is that what this is? You need my farm so you can stop feeling useless. His shame turned instantly into anger. You make me feel that way. The words echoed beneath the barn roof. Not Kayla. Not his unemployment. Not the months on the couch. Me. Denise moved closer. This is not the time. No, I said. It is exactly the time. You all came to my farm because you thought I would not be here. Kayla shut the cupboard. Her voice was smooth. Rachel, some properties need someone willing to turn grief into something useful. The same sentence she had spoken in my living room. This time it sounded less like advice and more like ownership. I walked toward her. Tasha moved with me. My grief kept this place standing, I said. Your ideas do not give you a key. Kayla's expression hardened. I am not your enemy. Then why are you in my grandmother's barn with my husband? The room went quiet. Kelsey looked at Mason. Denise looked at Kayla. No one looked surprised enough. That told me more than denial would have. Mason came between us. You are exhausted. You are not thinking clearly. I almost laughed. The sentence had arrived exactly as they planned. Rachel is tired. Rachel is emotional. Rachel cannot manage. I reached up and touched the fake silver earring in my left ear. Mason's eyes followed my hand. You do not look exhausted, he said. He spoke so quietly that perhaps he intended only me to hear. But Tasha heard. Her head turned sharply. What did you say? I asked. Mason recovered. I said you have been under stress. No, you said I do not look exhausted. His gaze went to my earrings again. Then he stepped closer. Are those the ones I gave you? The barn seemed to contract. I made myself hold still. What other ones would they be? He reached toward my ear. Tasha caught his wrist before he touched me. Do not. Mason jerked away. Get your hands off me. Then keep yours off her. Denise gasped as if Tasha had attacked him. Kelsey lifted her phone. Do not film me, Tasha said. People should see how Rachel's friend is behaving. I looked at Kelsey. You already showed people enough. Then I saw the box beneath the workbench. It was one of Denise's event storage bins. The lid had not closed completely because something wooden was caught beneath it. I recognized the painted edge. June's roadside apples sign. I crossed the barn and lifted the lid. Inside were two of June's serving platters, a framed photograph from the kitchen, her blue table runner, and the hand-painted sign. The shock was so physical I had to put one hand on the bench. When did you take these? Kelsey's face changed. We borrowed them. When? No answer. Then I remembered Thanksgiving. The folding tables, the chair covers, the Christmas photograph. You took them after dinner. We were going to return them. For the wedding I never approved. Denise's voice softened. Rachel, those things were sitting here collecting dust. The rage left me. What replaced it was colder. They belonged to June. She would want them used. You do not get to use a dead woman's wishes every time you want something from the woman she left behind. Denise looked away. Mason picked up his jacket. Everybody pack up. Kelsey stared at him. What? We are leaving. The command was not respect for me. It was calculation. He had seen the fake earrings. He had heard Tasha repeat his comment. He wanted time to think. I stepped into the center aisle. The key. Mason stopped. What? The farm key. It is on my key ring. Remove it. I am not doing this in front of everyone. You chose the audience. For a moment I thought he would refuse. Then the unmarked police car turned slowly onto the lane and stopped within view of the barn. Mason saw it. His face went still. He removed the key. It took longer than it should have because his fingers had begun to shake. He placed it in my palm, not gently. "You have made your point." "No," I said. "I have made a boundary. You keep confusing those." The sentence sounded prepared even though it was not. I immediately wished I had said nothing. Mason gave a humorless smile. "There she is. Payroll Rachel. Everything has a line. Everything belongs in the correct box." I looked at the box containing June's things. "Some lines are there because you crossed them." He walked past me. Kayla followed him. That was the mistake. Not Denise. Not Kelsey. Mason. She followed my husband out of my barn in front of his mother and sister as naturally as if she had done it many times. Kelsey watched them go. Something uncertain moved across her face. Then Denise snapped, "Help me with the chairs." The family continued cleaning up, as though the affair were less urgent than protecting the linens from rain. That was the Reed family in one image. A marriage collapsing in the driveway. Everyone worried about the chair covers. After the vehicles left, May emerged from the farmhouse carrying a wooden spoon. "I could not find the shovel," she said. Tasha laughed once, mostly from relief. Detective Ruiz entered the barn and looked at the half-packed bins. "Did anyone threaten you?" "Number. Did Mr. Reed touch you?" He tried to touch the earring. Tasha stopped him. Ruiz looked at Tasha. "He asked whether they were the ones he gave her," Tasha said. "Then he said she did not look exhausted." Ruiz wrote that down. I stood beside June's workbench, staring at the marks left by the gold fabric. A folded notebook lay beneath the tape measure Mason had abandoned. It was not June's. The cover bore the logo of Denise's event business. Ruiz put on gloves before opening it. Most pages contained ordinary lists, chair counts, table sizes, delivery dates. Then she reached a page headed Hawthorne Phase 1. Barn repair. Mom storage. Kelsey wedding. Kayla product studio. Farmhouse office. Near the bottom in Mason's handwriting were 4 words. Rachel room possible guest use. For a second I could not breathe. They had planned storage for Denise, a wedding for Kelsey, a studio for Kayla, an office for Mason, and a possible guest room for me, in my own house. Tasha read it over Ruiz's shoulder. "Oh, Rachel." I did not cry. I took a photograph of the page. Then I walked outside and stood in the rain. The apple branches were nearly bare. Water ran from the barn roof where it had always leaked. For years I had thought Mason wanted to be included in my life. The notebook showed me something worse. He wanted to rearrange my life until my presence became optional. Ruiz came outside. "This helps show motive, but I need you to remain careful. He knows you are not behaving the way he expected. He knows the earrings were fake. Maybe he suspects something. What happens now? We finish what we are doing." The answer frustrated me. I wanted an immediate end. Real danger rarely provides one. Instead, I carried June's serving platters back into the farmhouse. I washed them even though they were not dirty. My hands shook against the ceramic. Tasha stood beside me drying each one. Neither of us tried to turn the moment into a lesson. That helped more than a speech. The following Monday, Mason came to the district office. Security called my desk and said my husband was in the lobby. I did not go down. He sent a photograph of himself beside the visitor counter. "I just want to talk." Then another. "You cannot hide behind your friend forever." Detective Ruiz told me to remain upstairs. Security asked him to leave. He did. But when I walked to the parking deck after work, he was waiting beside my car. The sight of him stopped me halfway down the row. He wore the gray jacket I had bought him for interviews. For one painful second, I remembered adjusting the collar before his first interview and telling him he looked capable. Then he stepped away from the concrete pillar. "You blocked my car at the farm." I looked toward the stairwell. Tasha was 2 floors above finishing a call. Security was inside the building. I pressed the record button on my phone and kept it inside my coat pocket. "You were told to leave. You brought police to a family disagreement. You entered my property without permission. Our marriage gives me permission." "Number." The word came out quieter than I intended. Mason glanced around the garage. "You have turned everyone against me." "I have told almost no one." "Tasha knows. The police know. Your boss knows." "My boss knows I need remote days. He does not know why." "You always do this." "Do what?" "Make yourself look calm while I look unstable." I stared at him. Mason had spent years telling me my feelings were the problem. Now my calm was also the problem. He took another step. "I was trying to build a future." With Kayla, his jaw tightened. Kelsey has filled your head with nonsense. Kelsey did not put Kayla's name under Product Studio. He went pale. You went through my notebook. You left it in my barn. That was business planning. It included a guest room for me. He looked away. The movement was small, but it carried shame. Then the shame hardened. You are never going to live there full time. How did you know? You complain about the drive. You have a job in Charlotte. You like being near Tasha. You would have sold eventually. No, you needed me to sell eventually. His eyes lifted to mine. You do not understand what it has been like living with someone who has all the power. I almost answered with one of the perfect sentences I had imagined later. Instead, I said the truth. I paid for our home. I paid for your food. I helped with your resume. I asked you to work. I asked you to talk to me. What power did I keep from you? The power to decide whether I mattered. His voice cracked. That was the closest he came to honesty. Mason did not only want the farm. He wanted the farm to prove that he was no longer the unemployed husband living on my paycheck. He wanted Denise to see him as the son who rescued the business. He wanted Kelsey to see him as the brother who delivered her dream wedding. He wanted Kayla to see him as a man with land plans and a future. My continued ownership reminded him that none of those things had been built by him. I felt pity. Then I remembered the dark water. Pity did not erase danger. You mattered before you tried to take what was mine. His face closed. You think you are so righteous. Number. That answer surprised him. I think I stayed too long. I think I explained too much. I think I kept waiting for the man from June's funeral to come back. For a moment his eyes changed. I saw grief there. Maybe even shame. Then he looked at my ears. I wore no earrings. You stopped wearing them. Yes. Why? Because I wanted to. The mask slipped. Are you sick? He asked too quickly. I held his gaze. Should I be? The parking garage went silent except for a car turning on the level below us. Mason's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Then he said, you have always been dramatic. He walked away. Not toward the elevators. Toward the street. I remained beside my car until Tasha arrived. When she heard the recording, she looked at me. He asked whether you were sick. Yes. He expected you to be. Yes. Saying it aloud did not make it more true. It made it harder to escape. Detective Ruiz listened to the recording that evening. She did not celebrate. She simply said, do not meet him alone again. I did not plan to. Danger does not care what you planned. I nodded. That night, Mason sent one message. You have no idea what you are destroying. I typed 3 different replies, then deleted all of them. The next morning, the Reed family group chat became active. Denise wrote Sunday. 2 o'clock. We are settling this like a family. Kelsey responded with a thumbs up. Brandon wrote nothing. Mason wrote Rachel will be there. I had not agreed. Then Kayla, who had never before been included in the chat, responded, whatever helps everyone move forward. For years, I had been told I was imagining the way they replaced me. Now my husband's mistress was helping schedule a family meeting about my inheritance. I showed the messages to Detective Ruiz. She read them twice. Would you be willing to attend if we control the setting? My first reaction was no. Then I pictured Hawthorne Farm, June's kitchen, Kelsey's wedding diagrams, Denise's storage labels, Mason's belief that he could walk into my home and speak for me. I want the meeting at the farm, I said. Ruiz looked at me carefully. Why? Because that is the room they have been trying to take. I want the truth spoken there. She did not romanticize it. She explained the risks. She told me officers would be nearby. She told me not to confront anyone alone, not to touch the original earrings, and not to improvise. I agreed. Then I sent one message to the family chat. Sunday, 2 o'clock, Hawthorne Farm. We will discuss the property. Kelsey replied within seconds. Finally. That single word told me everything they expected. The group chat was not the only place they began preparing the story. That afternoon, Denise posted a photograph of Hawthorne Farm beneath a long message about loving someone through an emotional crisis. She did not use my name. She did not have to. She wrote that grief could make a person cling to empty places, mistrust family, and mistake support for control. She asked friends to pray for a woman we love who is not herself right now. Kelsey shared it with a broken heart emoji. Within an hour, relatives began contacting me. An aunt wrote, Mason says you haven't been sleeping. Please let him help. A cousin sent, whatever is going on, don't punish Kelsey by taking away her wedding. Someone I had met once at Christmas wrote, "Family is more important than property." I stared at the messages. Mason had tried to make me sick. Now his family was publishing the explanation they would have used if he had succeeded. Rachel is grieving. Rachel is exhausted. Rachel is not herself. Rachel is the one hurting everyone. Tasha found me at this kitchen counter with the phone in my hand. Do not answer all of them. I look unstable if I stay silent. You look unstable to people who already accepted a story without calling you. That is still a lot of people. She pulled out the chair beside me. Then decide whose opinion has access to your life. A new message appeared. It was from Brandon. Can I ask you something without Kelsey knowing? I showed Tasha. Answer carefully, she said. I typed yes. His reply came slowly. Did Mason really tell Kelsey you agreed to the farm? Yes. Did you ever say yes? Number. 3 dots appeared, vanished, then returned. Kelsey said you changed your mind after we paid for the layout. I wrote I never approved a layout. I did not know one existed until it was on Denise's table. Another pause. Then, I'm sorry. It was not enough to make Brandon brave, but it was the first crack in the family's shared version. I saved the exchange and put the phone down. That evening, Denise called from an unfamiliar number. I answered because Detective Ruiz had asked me to document contact. Denise began without greeting. You need to remove Tasha from the situation. Tasha is not the situation. She is feeding your fear. The earrings fed my fear. Her silence lasted less than a second. What earrings? She knew exactly which ones. The gift Mason gave me. He gave you jewelry because he wanted to repair the marriage. Did he tell you that? Yes. Did he tell you what he expected to happen after I wore them? Her breathing changed. Rachel, listen to me. I do not know what idea you have put together, but Mason is frightened. So am I. He says you have police watching him. He came to my office and waited beside my car. He is your husband. That sentence does not make everything he does acceptable. Denise's voice sharpened. You are blowing up an entire family because you refuse to admit you need help. What kind of help? Mason taking over the property, me handling the event side, Kelsey bringing life back into the barn, you slowing down for once. And Kayla, silence. What does Kayla get, Denise? She has ideas. She has my husband. You have not acted like a wife in a long time. The cruelty of the sentence was so familiar that it failed to surprise me. What does a wife act like? She does not make her husband beg for a place in her life. I gave him every place except the one June left in my name. That is the place that could have changed everything. There it was again, the belief beneath every conversation. My boundary was the cause of their suffering. I said, did you know he expected me to become tired? Denise lowered her voice. Everyone can see you are carrying too much. Once you slow down, Mason can handle the farm the way a husband should. Not when. Once. As if my decline had already been scheduled. I let the silence remain long enough that she became uncomfortable. Then she said, do not twist my words. I did not have to. I ended the call. Detective Ruiz listened to the recording the next morning. This does not prove she knew about the substance, she said. I know, but it shows she intended to use any weakness she saw. I know. That distinction mattered to the case. Emotionally, it changed very little. Denise may not have helped build the weapon. She had helped build the room where everyone expected me to surrender. Before I could leave, Ruiz handed back my phone. One more thing. Kayla's employer confirmed she removed a small amount of restricted material without authorization. My stomach tightened. Was it enough to kill me? We are not going to speculate. Was it enough to make me sick? Yes. The answer entered the room without drama. I looked down at the table. Ruiz said, her messages suggest she told herself it would only make you weak and confused. People often use smaller words when they need to live with a large choice. Weak. Confused. Not dead. As if leaving me alive made the plan merciful. On Saturday, Tasha drove with me to Hendersonville. It was the first time I had returned since forcing them out of the barn. The apple season was ending. Brown leaves collected along the porch steps. The roadside stand was closed, its hand-painted sign turned toward the wall. Inside, the house smelled faintly of cedar dust and June's old spice cabinet. I stood in the kitchen doorway and had to grip the frame. Tasha remained behind me. You okay? Number. Good answer. I laughed weakly. She carried in groceries while I opened windows. The rooms had waited. June's blue mixing bowl sat above the refrigerator. Her calendar from the final year still hung inside the pantry door with dentist appointments, church suppers, and pruning dates written in careful block letters. On October 14th, 3 years earlier, she had written Rachel plus Mason coming. I touched the ink. Mason had complained the entire drive because he wanted to watch a football game. June had made apple cake. He ate 3 pieces. Memory can be cruel because it preserves ordinary moments after the people inside them have revealed who they are. By evening, Tasha and I had cleaned the kitchen and front room. She found June's yellow apple mug in a box beneath the sink. "This the one?" she asked. I nodded. The testing company had kept the original mug and earrings as evidence. But seeing the matching mug made my stomach tighten. Tasha set it on the windowsill. "Your grandmother had a whole set, 6 mugs. She bought them at a church yard sale." "Good, because one poison mug does not get to own the whole pattern." That was Tasha. She could turn a kitchen object into a reason to keep breathing. We slept upstairs with the bedroom doors open. In the middle of the night, I woke to wind moving through the apple trees. For years, quiet had meant Mason was angry. Quiet meant I had said the wrong thing. Quiet meant a punishment was beginning. At Hawthorne Farm, the quiet did not ask anything from me. I lay awake until dawn and realized I had missed that kind of silence more than I had missed the house. Late Saturday night after Tasha went upstairs, I returned to the kitchen alone. I set 6 chairs around June's table, then counted again. Denise, Mason, Kelsey, Brandon, Kayla, me. Tasha would sit near the doorway. Detective Ruiz would remain close enough to enter when she needed to. I placed June's chair at the head. For years, I had allowed Denise to choose the seat, set the tone, and define what counted as a family problem. The chair was a small thing, but small things had been used to erase me. I decided they could also mark my return. Inside the pantry, I found the Christmas card made from the photograph I had taken at Thanksgiving. "Family is home." 4 Reed faces smiled from the front of my grandmother's barn. My name appeared inside. I leaned the card against the sugar jar, not as evidence, as a reminder that this had started long before the earrings. Tasha came downstairs for water and saw the table. "What are you hoping happens tomorrow?" she asked. I used to think I wanted them to admit I was right. And now, I looked toward June's chair. I want to say no in this house and not spend the next year explaining why I was allowed to. Tasha nodded. "That sounds harder." "It is." She did not give me a perfect line. She filled a glass, checked the back door, and went upstairs. I remained at the table for another hour. I practiced no speech. I did not know what Mason would deny, what Denise would defend, or whether Kelsey would cry before anyone reached the truth. I only decided on 3 things. I would not shout. I would not apologize. And I would not protect them from the silence after everyone understood. At 8:13 Sunday morning, Mason sent one final message. "I know you're scared. Let me handle the talking today." For the first time, I answered with exactly what I thought. "You have handled enough." He did not reply. Sunday morning, I made biscuits. My hands remembered the work even though I had not done it in years. Flour, cold butter, buttermilk, fold, turn, press. June used to say dough could feel fear. "Don't apologize to it," she would tell me. "Touch it like you belong in the kitchen." At 1:30, an unmarked police car parked beyond the tree line near the old equipment shed. Detective Ruiz came through the back door. She wore jeans and a dark sweater, not a uniform. "2 officers are outside," she said. "Another team is waiting for Kayla to arrive. We have enough to act today, but I need you to understand your safety matters more than the scene going the way you imagine." "I understand. If Mason becomes aggressive, you step away." "I understand." Tasha stood beside me. She steps away or I move her. Ruiz almost smiled. At 1:52, Denise's SUV turned onto the gravel lane. Kelsey and Brandon followed in a separate car. Mason arrived alone. Kayla arrived last. That detail hurt. Not because she came, because none of them found it strange that my husband and the woman he was sleeping with arrived separately to discuss my grandmother's property. They had normalized the betrayal before I was allowed to name it. Denise entered carrying a bakery box. "We brought pie," she said, as if the previous 10 days had been a minor misunderstanding. She hugged the air beside my shoulder. Kelsey walked in with a fabric swatch book. Brandon stayed near the door. Mason looked thinner. His eyes searched my face, then my ears. I wore no jewelry. He noticed. "Where are the earrings?" he asked quietly. "Safe." His jaw tightened. Kayla remained behind him. She wore a camel-colored coat and carried no purse. When she saw Detective Ruiz near the kitchen archway, she stopped. Ruiz had introduced herself as a friend helping me with the house. Kayla recovered quickly. "Nice place," she said. I looked at her. "You've seen pictures." Her face changed. Only for a second. Denise clapped her hands. "All right, let's sit down and be adults." She chose June's chair at the head of the table. I had never seen her sit there before. Something inside me hardened. "Move," I said. Denise looked up. "Excuse me." That was my grandmother's chair. Her mouth opened. I pointed to the seat beside Kelsey. "You can sit there." The room went quiet. Then Denise smiled with tight patience. "Rachel, we are not starting with hostility. No, we are starting with you moving out of June's chair." Mason stepped forward. "Mom, just move." Denise looked at him in surprise. Then she stood and changed seats. I sat at the head of the table. For the first time in years, no one spoke over me. Tasha poured coffee. The bakery pie remained unopened. Kelsey placed her swatch book on the table. "I brought options," she said. "I thought we could turn this into something positive." "What do you think is happening today?" I asked. She blinked. "We're finalizing the sale plan. I said we would discuss the property. Mason said you had agreed." Every face turned toward him. Mason spread his hands. "I said she was ready to talk." "No," Kelsey said. "You said she was ready to stop fighting." Denise interrupted. "Words are getting twisted again." I looked at her. "Then let's use clear ones." I placed a black jewelry box in the center of the table. It was not the original. The police had that. This box held the costume earrings I bought. Mason's face lost color. Kelsey frowned. "What is that?" "A gift from my husband." Denise looked at Mason. Kayla stared at the box. I continued. 3 weeks ago, I helped an old man cross a street in Charlotte. He knew my name. He told me that when Mason gave me earrings, I should not wear them. He told me to leave them in warm water overnight. No one moved. I looked at Mason. "The next night you gave me these." His voice came too quickly. "That is insane." The water turned dark. The posts opened. Kelsey gave a nervous laugh. "Rachel, come on." A lab found a toxic compound inside them. The room became completely still. Outside, wind moved dry leaves across the porch. Mason looked toward the door. Detective Ruiz stepped away from the wall. Denise's face tightened. "You had them tested?" "Yes. Without telling your husband." I almost admired the instinct. Even then, she found a way to make my survival disloyal. "I said he gave me poison without telling his wife." Mason stood. "That is not what happened." "Sit down," Ruiz said. He looked at her. "Who are you?" "Detective Elena Ruiz, Charlotte Mecklenburg Police." Kelsey's mouth fell open. Brandon whispered, "Oh my God." Kayla pushed back her chair. An officer appeared in the doorway behind her. Ruiz said, "Please remain seated." Mason looked at me. For the first time since I met him, I saw his face without charm, self-pity, or performance. There was only anger. "You set me up." I held his gaze. "You handed me the earrings. You don't know what they were for." "Then tell everyone." His mouth moved, but no words came. I turned toward Kayla. "You helped design them." She shook her head. "Number." "The repair shop has camera footage." Kelsey stared at her. "What is she talking about?" Kayla's voice broke. "You said she never wore them." Mason turned on her. "Shut up!" Kelsey stared at both of them. "Wore what?" Kayla covered her mouth, but the confession had already escaped. "I was told it would only make her tired," she whispered. "I did not think." Detective Ruiz cut in. "You can explain that at the station." That was the moment the entire family understood. Not every detail. "Enough." Denise stood. "Mason." He did not look at her. Kelsey turned to her mother. "You said Rachel was just stressed." Denise whispered, "I didn't know about this." I believed her. I also did not forgive her. I looked around the table. "You may not have known what was inside the earrings, but you knew Mason was sleeping with Kayla." Denise's face went rigid. Kelsey looked from her mother to Mason. "What?" Brandon closed his eyes. I continued. "You knew they were waiting for me to get sick. You told Mason not to rush me. You told him to let me think selling the farm was my idea." "I never said that." I took out my phone. Denise's voice filled June's kitchen. The recording came from the call she made on the 6th day. I had asked her what she meant at dinner. She had become angry and said more than she realized. "Mason needs you to stop pushing back. Once you slow down, once you finally admit you cannot manage everything, he can step in. Let him make the sale feel like relief. If he pushes too hard, you will resist just to prove a point. The recording ended. No one spoke. Denise looked smaller. Kelsey stared at her mother as if seeing her clearly for the first time. I said you did not know he was causing the illness, but you were ready to use it. Denise's eyes filled with tears. I was trying to save my family. I felt no triumph, only exhaustion. I was your family when the storage bill was due. She looked away. I was your family when Kelsey's card was declined. Kelsey flushed. I was your family when Mason needed rent insurance, groceries, a car, an excuse, or someone to blame. But the moment I protected one thing that belonged to me, you called me selfish. No one interrupted. I touched the table. This house raised me after my mother died. June made a place for me when my father chose another life. And all of you stood in this kitchen planning how to use it after I became too weak to say no. Mason's voice came low. You always loved this place more than me. I turned to him. No, I just refused to disappear for you. His eyes narrowed. You think you're innocent? You made me feel like a guest in my own marriage. I gave you a home food time and chance after chance. You did not want partnership. You wanted ownership. Denise whispered, Rachel, please. I looked at her. No. You have used that word on me for years. Please pay. Please forgive. Please stay quiet. Please let Kelsey have the barn. Please give Mason another chance. Please stop embarrassing us. My voice remained calm. I am finished being the woman your family calls difficult whenever I tell the truth. Kelsey began crying. Not soft tears, angry, confused tears. My wedding, she said. What am I supposed to do? Tasha made a sound behind me, but I lifted one hand. I answered Kelsey myself. You are supposed to plan a wedding you can afford at a place you have permission to use. She looked as though I had slapped her. Brandon stared at the floor. Then he said quietly, she's right. Kelsey turned on him. Whose side are you on? He looked at her. There should not be sides in asking someone before using their house. Then he pushed his chair back. And there is not going to be a wedding, Kelsey, not after this. Kelsey stared at him. You cannot do this to me here. Brandon looked around June's kitchen, the poisoned earrings on the table, the wedding plans beside them, police at the door. This is where you planned it, he said. That was the first decent thing anyone connected to the Reeds had done all afternoon. Detective Ruiz stepped forward. Mason Reed and Kayla Monroe stand up. Denise moved between Ruiz and her son. No, wait, we can talk about this. Ruiz's expression did not change. Ma'am, step aside. Denise looked at me. How could you do this to him? The question echoed through the kitchen. I thought of the mug, the photographs, the engagement dinner I paid for, the phone calls, the years of silence I mistook for peace. Then I said I did not do this to your son. I finally stopped letting your son do it to me. Denise stepped aside. The officers placed Mason in handcuffs. He did not look afraid. He looked offended, as though consequences were another thing someone had unfairly withheld from him until now. When he passed my chair, he leaned close enough that only I could hear. You'll regret destroying this family. I looked straight ahead. I told the truth. That is not the same as destroying what you built on lies. Kayla cried quietly as an officer led her through the door. Kelsey remained at the table, one hand over her mouth. Brandon left through the front door without looking back. Denise stood in June's kitchen, surrounded by wedding fabric, cold coffee, and an unopened pie. For the first time, she had nothing to say. The whole family went silent. After the cars left, I opened every window. I do not know why that was my first instinct. Maybe the room needed air. Maybe I did. Denise gathered her purse. At the door, she turned. He loved you once. I believe that too. Some truths do not cancel other truths. I loved him once, I said. That did not give me the right to harm him. Her face folded. Then she left. Kelsey stayed longer. She sat at the table crying while Tasha carried the untouched pie to the counter. Finally, Kelsey said, I didn't know about the earrings. I know. I knew about Kayla. The admission came barely above a whisper. I waited. She and Mason started talking last winter. Mom said your marriage was basically over. Mason said you were cold. He said you cared more about the farm than him. And you believe that? I wanted to. Why? Kelsey looked toward the barn through the window. Because he promised we could use this place. There it was. Not misunderstanding. Not loyalty. Convenience. She wiped her face. I didn't think he would hurt you. You helped him erase me because the version of the story he told benefited you. Her mouth trembled. I'm sorry. I had imagined apologies differently. I thought a real apology would repair something immediately. Instead, hers landed in a room full of damage and remained only words. I hear you, I said. Do you forgive me? Number. She looked shocked. I continued gently. Not now, maybe never. Forgiveness is not yours to schedule. She cried harder. Tasha turned away to give her privacy. I did not. For years, I had protected Kelsey from the full weight of what she did. That day, I let her feel it. When she left, she took the swatch book. She left the farm layout behind. I carried it to June's wood stove and watched the paper curl into black edges. The rectangle labeled permanent event storage disappeared first, then the parking spaces, then the words ceremony and reception. The farmhouse remained. That night, Tasha and I ate biscuits at the kitchen table. No one spoke for a long time. Finally, she said, "You know, those were the most dramatic biscuits I've ever had." I laughed. The laughter turned into sobbing. Tasha moved her chair beside mine and held me until I could breathe again. People imagine strength as a clean moment. A woman stands up. She says the perfect sentence. The villains are taken away. Music rises. But real strength is often followed by shaking. After everyone left, I checked the locks 3 times. I vomited in June's downstairs bathroom. I sat on the kitchen floor because my legs would not hold me. I woke at 3 in the morning, convinced I heard Mason's key in the front door. I was strong at the table. I was terrified afterward. Both things were true. The following weeks were not a victory montage. They were paperwork, phone calls, panic, and ordinary responsibilities that did not pause because my marriage had become a crime scene. Teachers still needed correct paychecks. The electric bill still arrived. The townhouse still contained my clothes books, dishes, and the framed wedding photograph I could no longer look at. Police recovered Mason's laptop and phone. I learned enough to understand the plan without making the plan the center of my life. Mason and Kayla had been involved for almost a year. They believed that if I became gradually ill, I would stop traveling to Hawthorne Farm. Mason would take over maintenance. Denise would begin storing event equipment in the barn. Kelsey's wedding would establish the property publicly as a Reed family venue. Then Mason would pressure me to sell or transfer control. Their messages were full of sentences that made my skin crawl. She'll give in when she's too tired to fight. Your mom can start moving chairs in after Thanksgiving. Once the wedding happens, there it'll feel like hours. The last sentence hurt most. It will feel like hours. That was how erasure worked. Not all at once. One chair moved into the barn. One family photograph without me. One decision made before I entered the room. One word ours used often enough that my ownership began to sound selfish. Detective Ruiz told me Mason had searched for ways to make chronic illness look like stress. Kayla had access to dangerous materials through work and believed she could control the amount. They had not planned a sudden death. They had planned a slow disappearance. That distinction haunted me. They wanted me alive enough to sign, weak enough not to resist, confused enough to doubt myself. The physical harm was horrifying, but the emotional plan was familiar. For years, the Reed family had already been teaching me not to trust my own discomfort. The earrings were only the most extreme version of a system that had been in place for a long time. A month after the arrests, I returned to the townhouse with Detective Ruiz and 2 officers. Mason's coffee mug still sat in the dish rack. His shoes were beside the door. A hoodie hung over the back of the couch. The ordinary presence of him was harder to face than the evidence. I walked room to room, placing my belongings in boxes. Tasha came with her SUV. Her son carried books. Her daughter wrapped June's dishes in newspaper. No one asked me why I had stayed. No one told me what they would have noticed sooner. They simply helped. In the bedroom, I opened the top dresser drawer. The original black jewelry box was gone, taken as evidence. In the empty space, I found a stack of old anniversary cards. For the first 5 years, Mason had written long messages. You are home. You make me want to be better. Thank you for choosing me. The 6th year said love you always. The 7th card had only his name. There was no 8th card. I sat on the edge of the bed with those pieces of paper in my lap. I did not know whether the earlier words had been true when he wrote them. That question consumed me for days. Then my therapist, Dr. Patel, asked, what would change if they were true? I thought about it. He still did what he did. And if they were false? He still did what he did. She nodded. Sometimes the past cannot give us a verdict that changes the present. I hated that answer. It was also useful. I stopped trying to decide whether Mason had always been a monster. He had been a young man who loved me. He had also become a man who believed my body money and inheritance were obstacles he was entitled to manage. Both could exist in the same life. Accepting that was harder than turning him into a stranger. A stranger would have been easier to hate. In December, Denise sent me a handwritten letter. It arrived at Tasha's house because I had changed my mailing address. The envelope said Rachel in the large looping handwriting she used on birthday cards. Inside were 4 pages. She wrote that Mason had made terrible choices. She wrote that Kayla manipulated him. She wrote that prison would destroy his future. She wrote that a mother never stops seeing the little boy inside a grown man. She wrote that June would not want me to carry bitterness. She wrote that families heal through mercy. She did not write that she was sorry for excluding me. She did not write that she was sorry for knowing about the affair. She did not write that she was sorry for planning to use my illness. She did not ask how I slept. She did not ask whether I was afraid. At the bottom she wrote, "Please remember the good man he was before you decide how much punishment he deserves." I read the letter twice. Then I wrote one sentence on a separate sheet of paper. I remembered the good man. He is the reason I gave the dangerous one too many chances. I did not mail it. I burned both letters in June's wood stove. Kelsey's wedding did not happen that fall. Brandon ended the engagement in June's kitchen. 3 months later, he sent a brief email. "Rachel, I should have spoken sooner. I knew the way they talked about the farm was wrong, but I wanted to keep the peace. I understand now who paid for that peace. I am sorry." I believed him. I did not reply. Not every apology requires a relationship. The Reed event business closed before spring. For years, that outcome would have made me feel guilty. I would have imagined Denise standing in an empty storage unit and wondered whether I could have prevented it. Then I remembered how quickly they planned to fill my barn. Their business did not close because I protected my farm. It closed because they had built it on debt entitlement and the expectation that another woman's property would rescue them. Mason and Kayla both accepted plea agreements. I will not turn the legal process into the ending of my story. There were hearings. There were statements. There were consequences. Mason received a long prison sentence. Kayla received less, but enough that her life changed permanently. I attended the final hearing because I wanted my name spoken in a room where Mason could not redefine it. When given the chance to speak, I did not describe every message or every sleepless night. I said this: "My husband did not only try to make me sick, he tried to make my weakness look natural so that my surrender would look voluntary. He counted on the fact that I had been trained to doubt myself. He counted on my love, my patience, and my fear of embarrassing his family. Those were not weaknesses in me. They were good qualities he chose to exploit. I am here because I no longer accept responsibility for what he did with my trust." Mason looked at the table. He never looked at me. That hurt less than I expected. Afterward, Detective Ruiz walked me to the courthouse steps. "You did well," she said. I shook the entire time. "You can shake and still stand." I carried that sentence with me. The person I wanted to find most was Ruth Calder. Detective Ruiz had located and interviewed her, but Ruth had asked that I contact her only when I was ready. I waited until January. She lived in a small brick house outside Fort Mill, South Carolina, with a front garden full of rosemary and winter pansies. Arthur opened the door. The old man from the intersection. He wore the same brown cap. When he saw me, he nodded. "You remembered." I remembered everything. Ruth sat in the living room beside a window. She was 78 with silver hair cut to her chin and hands marked by years of fine work. A magnifying lamp stood beside a small desk covered with tools. On the wall behind her hung a photograph of 2 young women standing in front of Hawthorne Farm. One was Ruth. The other was June. My grandmother looked about 30, laughing with her head turned toward the sun. I touched the frame. "When was this?" 1980, Ruth said. "Your grandmother had just talked me out of going back to a man who had already broken 2 of my fingers." I turned. Ruth's voice remained calm. "My first husband believed my jewelry shop belonged to him because he helped paint the walls. He took money. He signed my name. He told customers I was unstable. When I tried to leave, he said no one would believe a woman who cried as much as I did." Arthur sat in a chair near the door. Ruth continued. "June believed me. 2 words. That was the beginning of everything. June believed me. Ruth told me that my grandmother drove her to a safe place, stored her tools in the Hawthorne barn, and sat beside her during the months when she rebuilt her life. She never asked me to repay her, Ruth said, but I made her a promise. What promise? That if someone she loved ever stood where I had stood, I would not look away. Years later, when June became ill, she told Ruth about me. She described my work, my marriage, my attachment to the farm. She worried that I carried too much alone. She did not accuse Mason of anything. At that time, there may have been nothing to accuse, but she said Rachel is loyal past the point of pain. If she ever needs help, she may be the last person to admit it. Ruth had remembered. The jewelry repair shop belonged to a former apprentice of hers. She stopped by one afternoon and saw the earrings beneath the magnifying lamp. The hollow posts alarmed her. Then the owner mentioned a husband named Mason, a wife named Rachel, and a farm near Hendersonville. Ruth called June's old neighbor, May Collins, who confirmed my married name and where I worked. Ruth considered calling me directly. But what would you have thought, she asked? That you were confused? Or trying to scam you? Yes. So I called Arthur. Arthur lifted his hands. I was available. Ruth smiled. He also has a face, people remember. I'm not sure that was a compliment, he said. For the first time in months, I laughed without sadness underneath it. Why the warm water? I asked. Ruth's expression turned serious. Because I did not know what was in the posts. I only knew the seal was designed to soften with heat. Warm water would reveal that without putting them against your skin. You knew my name. May showed Arthur a photograph. Arthur nodded. You wore the same green coat most days. I looked at him. You waited for me 4 afternoons. The weight of that landed slowly. He had stood near the intersection for 4 days. An elderly man with sore knees and a canvas bag, waiting for a stranger who did not know she needed him. Why didn't you go to the police? I asked. Ruth looked down at her hands. We did. We had suspicion and a strange piece of jewelry that did not belong to us. The shop owner did not know the contents. There was not enough to act quickly. I was afraid that if Mason learned anyone had questions, he would choose another method. So you warned me. We gave you one thing you could verify yourself. I began crying. Ruth stood slowly and crossed the room. She held me the way June used to, one hand between my shoulder blades, the other resting lightly against the back of my head. I'm sorry we frightened you, she whispered. You saved me. June saved me first. We stood like that for a long time. Later, Arthur made coffee. Ruth showed me photographs. June at a craft fair. June holding a crooked birthday cake. June and Ruth sanding display shelves in the Hawthorne barn. There were years of my grandmother's life I had never known. Not secrets. Simply rooms I had not entered. Before I left, Ruth gave me a small cloth pouch. Inside was a pair of plain silver earrings shaped like apple blossoms. I stiffened. She saw it. You never have to wear earrings again, she said. These are not a request. They are only yours if you want them. I held one in my palm. The post was thin and solid. Ruth had engraved a single word on the back of each flower. Believe. I did not wear them that day. I carried them home. Healing did not arrive because the case ended or because I finally understood Arthur's warning. It came in pieces small enough that I almost missed them. The first night I slept 5 hours without checking the lock. The first morning I made coffee without thinking about the mug in the bathroom cabinet. The first time a car door slammed outside and my body did not prepare to run. In March, I moved permanently to Hawthorne Farm. My supervisor allowed me to work remotely 3 days a week and drive to Charlotte for the other 2. Tasha complained that mountain roads, bad internet, and country snakes were an unreasonable price for peace. You live beside a drainage pond, I reminded her. City snakes understand zoning. That was the kind of joke she made when she wanted me to know she was worried without turning worry into control. The farm did not welcome me with a perfect sunrise and a healed heart. A pipe burst behind the laundry room during my second week. The barn roof leaked exactly where I had warned Kelsey it leaked. Raccoons opened a bags of bread I forgot in the car. I cried in a hardware store because a man in the next aisle wore Mason's cologne. Recovery did not make me graceful. It made me persistent. May Collins arrived the morning after I moved in with a toolbox, a carton of eggs, and no interest in asking whether I wanted advice. You need metal on the west side of that roof, she said. I cannot afford a new roof. You can afford one section. That is not how roofs work. That is how old farms work. She was right. We repaired the dangerous boards first, then the leak, then the porch step that shifted under weight. We left the faded paint and crooked shelves for later. That became the way I rebuilt my life. First, what was unsafe, then what was leaking, then what simply looked tired. I stopped expecting myself to become a new woman all at once. I only stopped abandoning the woman who was already there. In April, Tasha brought her children for a weekend. We reopened June's roadside stand, even though apple season was months away. May supplied eggs. I sold rosemary bundles, biscuits wrapped in brown paper, and jars of apple butter June and I had made before she died. Tasha painted a sign, Hawthorne Farm Stand Honest Food, Fair Prices. On the back where customers could not see, she added, No family discount for people who steal the barn. I made her paint over it. She wrote it smaller. People stopped along the road. A teacher from Asheville bought every rosemary bundle. A retired couple remembered June and stood at the counter telling stories I had never heard. A young woman asked whether the barn could be rented for a wedding. For 1 second, my chest tightened. Then I said no, but thank you for asking. She smiled. No problem. She accepted the answer so easily that I almost laughed. No accusation, no lecture about family, no prediction that I would end up alone. Just no problem. A boundary could be ordinary when the person hearing it respected you. By summer, I knew what I wanted the barn to become. Not a wedding venue, not a product studio, not an event empire built to prove I had beaten the Reed family. June had fed people there. She had taught neighbors to can vegetables, mend clothes, and keep accounts for small farm stands. Years earlier, she had let Ruth store her jewelry tools in the barn while Ruth rebuilt her life. I wanted that pattern to continue. Once a month, we opened the barn for a practical workshop. Nothing grand. Budgeting, basic home repair, bread making, gardening, how to read a pay stub, how to open an account in your own name, how to ask for help without giving someone control over your choices. We called it June's Table. The first workshop had 9 people. The second had 22. Ruth taught a simple metal stamping class. Arthur handled registration because, according to him, every serious organization needed a man with a notebook and strong coffee. He wrote each person's name carefully. That mattered to me. No one was cropped out. No one was treated as useful only when a bill was due. No one had to surrender a piece of herself to earn a chair. At one workshop, a woman stayed behind after everyone else left. She was close to my age. She folded and unfolded a paper napkin until it tore along the edge. My husband controls all our money, she said. Every time I ask what we have, he says I'm accusing him of being a bad man. I did not tell her to leave. I did not tell her what I would do. I said being afraid to ask a reasonable question is information. Her eyes filled. Tasha gave her a list of local resources and explained how to request copies of documents connected to her own name. We sat with her until she was ready to go. Afterward, I stood alone in the barn. Sunlight came through the repaired roof in narrow gold lines. I thought about June believing Ruth recognizing the danger in the earrings, Arthur waiting near the intersection for 4 afternoons, Tasha opening her home, May arriving with tools the morning after I moved in. Help had moved from one person to another across decades. That was when I understood what June had truly left me. The farm mattered. The house mattered. The apple trees mattered. But legacy was not only property. Legacy was behavior that remained useful after the person was gone. Believe the frightened woman. Make room. Keep the promise. Do not confuse kindness with surrender. In August, Denise came to the farm. I saw her SUV turn onto the lane while May and I were repairing a shelf in the barn. My hands went cold. That still happened. Healing did not mean my body forgot before I was ready. May set down the drill. You want me nearby? Yes. A year earlier, I would have been embarrassed to admit that. Now I understood that accepting support did not transfer ownership of my courage. Denise parked beside the porch. She looked older, not transformed, not suddenly gentle, only tired. She carried a small framed photograph. I met her at the bottom of the steps. You cannot come inside. She stopped. I understand. That mattered more than any speech she could have prepared. What do you want? I asked. To apologize. I waited. She looked toward the barn. You fixed the roof. One section. Mason always said it needed too much work. Mason said that about anything he could not immediately use. Denise lowered her eyes. For several seconds, the only sound was the drill cooling on the workbench behind me. Then she said I knew about Kayla. I know. I told myself your marriage was already over. It was still useful enough for Mason to live in. She flinched. I did not know about the earrings. I believe you. Relief moved across her face. I did not let that relief become absolution. You knew he was waiting for me to become overwhelmed, I said. You planned to use it. Yes. The word came quietly. No excuse. No claim that I misunderstood. No speech about protecting her son. Just yes. I had imagined that honesty from Denise would feel like victory. It felt like finally placing a heavy object on the ground. Why, I asked. She took a breath. I was afraid of losing the business. My house, Kelsey's wedding, Mason's future. I kept looking for one thing that could save all of us. So you chose me to absorb the loss. Tears filled her eyes. Yes. It was the first answer she had ever given me that did not ask me to doubt myself. She held out the photograph. It was from Kelsey's engagement dinner, the uncropped version. I stood beside Mason looking directly at the camera. Kayla was near the edge. I found it on Kelsey's laptop, Denise said. She removed you. You saw the post. Yes. You said nothing. Yes. I did not take the photograph. What do you expect me to do with it? I don't know. That has always been the problem. Your family hurt me, then expected me to manage how everyone felt afterward. Denise began crying. I am sorry. I believed she meant it. That did not mean she entered the house. I hope you become someone who does not need another woman to disappear in order to feel secure, I said. She covered her mouth. Will you ever forgive me? There was a time when that question would have become my next assignment. I would have examined my heart, measured her pain, and tried to provide an answer that let everyone leave feeling hopeful. I no longer live that way. I am not building my life around that question, I said. She nodded. Then she placed the framed photograph on the porch step and walked back to her car. I left it there until the first drops of rain began. Then I removed the picture from the frame and carried it inside. I did not display it. I placed it in a box with the anniversary cards and the original Christmas card from Thanksgiving. Not because I wanted the past back, because I no longer needed to erase myself from it. I had been there. I had paid for dinner. I had loved people who failed me. Their betrayal did not make my love foolish. It made their choices theirs. That fall, the apple harvest was smaller than in June's best years, but larger than I expected. May brought crates. Tasha arrived with both teenagers. Ruth and Arthur drove up from Fort Mill. On Sunday afternoon, I stood at the long table in the barn watching everyone sort apples. No one had assigned seats. No one had been left behind the camera. No one was waiting for me to pay a hidden bill. Tasha's son played music too loudly. May complained that young people bruised fruit. Arthur gave parking instructions to people who had already parked. Ruth wore an apron June had made more than 40 years earlier. The barn was noisy. June had been right. Walls know the difference between love and noise. This noise did not make me smaller. It made room for me. In my pocket was the cloth pouch Ruth had given me. Inside were the silver apple blossom earrings she had made. The back of each flower carried one engraved word. Believe. I had owned them for months without putting them on. That afternoon, I went to the small mirror beside the barn sink. My hands began to shake before I opened the pouch. Ruth noticed. She came to stand several feet behind me, close enough to help and far enough not to take over. You do not have to, she said. I know. That was why I could. I lifted the first earring. The post was thin and solid. I pressed it through my left ear, then the right. Nothing happened. No burning. No hidden seam. No man waiting outside a bathroom door to learn whether his plan had begun. I looked at myself. The earrings did not make me more beautiful. They made me visible to myself. Outside, Tasha called that people were stealing the best apples. May shouted that sorting them was not stealing. Arthur claimed he had created a system. I laughed. Then I walked back to the table. That evening, after the last crate was stacked, May helped me attach a new wooden sign beside the roadside gate. The letters had been carved into oak from a fallen mountain tree. Hawthorne Farm. June's table, a place to be believed. The first screw slipped because my hands were tired. The second went in straight. We stepped back. The last sunlight crossed the carved words. For years, I believed dignity meant never needing help. I believed strength meant paying the bill, swallowing the insult, driving home, and keeping everyone else comfortable. That was not dignity. That was endurance. Dignity began when I stopped explaining my boundaries to people committed to crossing them. It grew when I accepted Tasha's couch, when I let Detective Ruiz protect me, when I trusted the warning from a stranger, when I told Denise she could not enter the house, when I said no without waiting for the whole family to agree that I had a right to say it. Mason wanted Hawthorne Farm because he saw a number. Denise saw rescue. Kelsey saw a wedding backdrop. Kayla saw a reward at the end of a plan. June saw a place where a frightened person could be believed. Now I saw it too. Sometimes people ask whether I regret helping Arthur cross the street. I do not. Helping him was the most ordinary thing I did that week. I was tired. I wanted to catch my train. I almost kept walking. But June had taught me to notice when someone stood at the edge of a road needing an arm. I thought I was helping an old man cross an intersection. In truth, he was helping me cross out of a life I had mistaken for safety. That is how help often arrives. Not with a grand announcement. Not through the person who promised to protect you. Sometimes it arrives through a stranger in a worn cap, a coworker with crackers in her desk, a neighbor carrying tools, a promise kept for a woman who has been gone for years. And sometimes the first step towards saving your life is not dramatic. It is listening when something feels wrong. It is refusing the gift that comes with pressure. It is calling one person. It is saying, I need you to believe me. My name is Rachel Bennett. I kept Hawthorne Farm. I kept my work. I kept the memory of the woman I was before Mason. I made peace with the woman who stayed too long. I did not keep the shame. That belonged to the people who created it. And if something in your own life feels slightly wrong, a kindness that appears only when someone wants access, a family that calls you selfish whenever you protect yourself, a gift that carries pressure. Remember this. You do not need the water to turn dark before your discomfort is real. You do not need the whole family to admit what happened before you are allowed to protect yourself. Your dignity is not decided by a family vote. Tell me in the comments. If you had been sitting in June's kitchen when the truth came out, would you have confronted them or walked away without giving them one more word? Either choice can be brave. The important thing is that the choice belongs to you.